My name is Robert Whitaker. I'm the Law Enforcement Affairs person at Merkle Science. And I thank you all for joining this webinar with Scott and I for a 3-hour crash course in crypto investigations. So Scott has a really great presentation, and I'm not going to steal Scott's thunder, but I will tell you that Scott is probably one of the premier investigators in crypto in the market right now. So he's doing a great job and probably holds the record. I'm not sure about this, but I think Scott probably holds the record for the largest seizure in a state local environment. So if it's different, let me know. But I think Scott probably, if not, he's pretty close to the top. So good job to Scott on that. I'll let him explain all that later. But anyway, Merkle Science, we're a risk and intelligence platform. We do investigations also. We have an investigation platform also in crypto. So blockchain analytics, it's not a new term anymore. We have offices around the world, New York, London, Bangalore, Singapore. And I myself, I set out in St. Louis. I work mostly remote, as most companies do these days. Merkle Science, we have a different level of products we offer. We offer Tracker, which is a investigative platform for blockchain analytics. So we cover multiple chains. We also cover the EVM chains, the tokens. It would be in the millions actually if you counted up all the tokens and chains, put them all together and mixed them up. It'd be probably millions of different assets that we cover across the market. So and then we actually have something very novel now. We have bridge coverage. Some of you may not understand what that means, but that means when you're swapping from one blockchain to another, we cover that bridge in the middle, which has kind of been a missing portion for blockchain analytics for a while now. So we cover that, and we're actually increasing our coverage as we speak. So that's good. We also have what we call the Compass feature, which is for financial compliance, so monitoring transactions across the blockchain. So if you're a crypto company and you're monitoring transactions, we have a product that has its own rule engine that you can modify. So you bring your own rules in, we bring you some rules, you bring more in. So it's highly modifiable to cover what you want to cover and set your own risk profiles. So, and we also have what we call KYBB, which is know your blockchain. And basically what that does is you can take a blockchain environment, you can load it up in there, and you can understand more about it, who's using it, some quantitative analysis on what that blockchain is doing, how it's operating, who's using it, what's being used for, the value in, the value out, all kinds of good stuff. So it's a very good tool to have for not only financial institutions, but regulators as well. So those are our business products. Now we also have business lines, of course, law enforcement, regulators, financial institutions, that kind of stuff. So, and we've been around for about 5 years. I'm not going to say we're the new kids on the block, but we're not as big as the old guys on the block either. So, but expect to see us out there more and more. Our products are gaining traction every day. So, thank you for joining us here at Merkle for this webinar. I'm going to turn it over to Scott. Scott's going to go through an intro and everything, and he's going to get started. So once again, thank you for joining. We have a great turnout this morning, and I think everyone will enjoy this. Scott, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much for that. Hopefully I can live up to the hype that you built up. So yeah, good morning, good afternoon, I guess, depending on where everyone is here today. Let me start by pulling up my presentation here. Robert, if you don't mind helping me out, I'm working with one monitor here today, so if any questions come in while I'm talking, I just probably won't be able to see them. So feel free to cut me off, answer the question. I can answer it, whatever the case might be.
Excellent. I will do, sir. Thank you.
All right, are you guys able to see this Mastering Crypto PowerPoint presentation here?
I can see, yes, sir. I think we have a question right at the hand. Someone raised their hand.
Okay.
Looks like maybe they put it back down, but so I think let me just check. Nope, let's go ahead and proceed.
Okay. Sounds good. So yeah, I mean, we're all here today, talk about some fundamentals with cryptocurrency investigations. We have people attending here from all over the place. And when I say that, I mean law enforcement, the banking industry, just private citizens who want to become educated in the cryptocurrency space, make sure they don't get scammed, protect their friends, family. So we're going to cover a little bit of everything today. Um, so if there's any questions at any point at the end, feel free to throw them out. So kind of like Robert said, we'll talk about myself just real briefly here, but my name's Scott Simons. I am a police detective with the Greenfield Police Department. That is a suburb of Milwaukee, city of Milwaukee in Wisconsin. So I have been in law enforcement for about 23 years now. Um, Done a little bit of everything throughout my career. Most of it has actually been in the drug trafficking and money laundering realm. From 2013 to 2023, I was assigned to the Drug Enforcement Administration Federal Task Force. And most of those 10 years I spent doing cyber drug trafficking investigations. Think of like the dark web, drugs being trafficked online, that sort of thing. So a lot of my investigations had to deal with um, drug organizations overseas, cryptocurrency. When you're buying drugs online, normally you're going to be paying with cryptocurrency. So that's kind of how I got into this area here. Since my time with the DEA, there's a temporary assignment. Since that ended, I have been focused primarily on cryptocurrency scams. We're going to, beginning of my presentation, we're going to talk about some of the more popular scams, but investment scams and things like that. I spent it during my time with the DEA. I did a lot with asset forfeiture and tracing cryptocurrency, recovering cryptocurrency, and that's primarily what I've been doing the last year again. Um, Over the last, we'll say 6 months, we've started getting a lot more cooperation from some of these crypto services out there. So we've actually had some really good success recovering stolen cryptocurrency and returning some of that to victims, but we'll get into that a little bit more later. I'm also part of the Midwest Cryptocurrency Task Force. We basically, as law enforcement, is receiving these reports from victims involving cryptocurrency. Most law enforcement, they still don't know what to do with these cases, where to begin. They don't have the proper tools, such as the Merkle Science Tracker. So they reach out to us and we jump on those cases right away, help them out. Hopefully, we can help the victim the best we can. And then, if any of you have heard of Operation Shamrock, I'm also a part of that. That is a private public sector collaboration in which victims, again, they don't know where to turn. They've lost tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars in cryptocurrency scams. They can reach out to our organization and we will help them with the tracing, get them in touch with the proper law enforcement agency. And I'm going to let Robert talk about himself here. He's got a wealth of knowledge, and he's going to be great on this training here today.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. So, like I said, my name is Robert Whitaker. I'm the Director of Law Enforcement Affairs for Merkle Science. I retired from Homeland Security Investigations as a supervisory agent. While I was there, I was probably the first manager for crypto investigations at the headquarters level for HSI and DHS. So, so I got started back in 2014. I guess that makes me kind of like the old guy here because that was 10 years ago. Now you don't find many people who've been in this business for 10 years, but been around crypto a long time. I remember back in the days when crypto was just Bitcoin. That was it. And then this thing called Ethereum came along, and I remember buying Ethereum at 8 cents. 8 cents. Buying Ethereum and trading with some of the guys in the team, just as kind of a novelty. But anyway, been in crypto a long time. Been in blockchain analytics. I've taught crypto a long time. Done a lot of investigations in crypto. If you have questions, I'd love to hear them. If you just want to hit me up on LinkedIn about a question, glad to do that as well. I do have a master's degree in law from Texas University School of Law and a Bachelor of Science in Criminal Administration. So, Yeah, that's me in a nutshell. Um, have a great course with Scott here. He's going to do a great job.
Thank you. And yeah, Robert's not lying. I mean, he's talking about 10 years ago when it was only Bitcoin. I remember, I mean, this was only 3 or 4 years ago. My first crypto actual certification I got was with a crypto tracing company. All they did was Bitcoin. That's the only type of crypto or blockchain they covered in the certification. Again, that was only 3 or 4 years ago. Now we're looking at, over 1,000 different blockchains and thousands of different types of cryptocurrency. So things are quickly evolving in the crypto space. So some things we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about some cryptocurrency crime, current trends, different types of, or some of the more common cryptocurrency scams out there. We're going to primarily focus, when we're talking about the fundamentals today, we're going to focus on Bitcoin and Ethereum. Bitcoin still absolutely by far the most popular cryptocurrency out there. Not all, but most victim scams, the scams generally start with Bitcoin. Again, not always. They are evolving now. We are seeing different cryptocurrencies more often now, but it's still primarily Bitcoin. And then if you understand the basics to the way the Ethereum blockchain works, you're going to understand how many of the other blockchains work as well. We're going to talk about DeFi, decentralized finance, and DEXs, which are decentralized exchanges. We'll just touch on that a little bit. Stablecoins have become extremely popular for money laundering for these criminal organizations, and it's great for law enforcement as well, because unlike other types of cryptocurrency, we can do some things with stablecoins that we can't with others. And then I'm going to go over a few successful cases to kind of show you what law enforcement can do in ways that maybe we can trace some cryptocurrency, identify some bad actors, and sometimes, if we get lucky, if we can move on it quick enough, recover some of the stolen funds. So before I get into this first slide here, the beginning of my presentation, I want to push through really quick. Just so we can spend a little bit more time on the things that you guys might have some questions on. Hopefully, I can get my presentation done, in an hour and a half or so, and we can have Robert give you some good time showing you the Merkle Science Tracker tool and exactly what it can do for you. So why should we care about cryptocurrency in general, right? So this graph here, shows IC3 complaints. If you're not familiar with IC3, it is the FBI's reporting database for victims to submit reports directly to the FBI's database called IC3. As you can see the numbers here, just going back to 2017 through 2023, I still don't have the final numbers for 2024, but I assure you it's going to be very similar to 23, if not higher. We're looking at, got to move this window here a little bit, but 2023, we're looking at, almost $6 billion in losses involving cryptocurrency. And keep in mind, this is only victims who are actually making the reports. Oftentimes they don't, and this is only victims who are reporting it directly to this database. So we know that number is going to be extremely higher. Here's another chart to kind of show you what we're looking at between 2020 and 2024. You can see on 2024, there's kind of that estimated amount. That's only because we're just barely into 2025 now. So those final numbers are still coming in. And we're still trying to identify some additional illicit cryptocurrency addresses. So basically what this graph is showing is identifying essentially dirty or bad guys cryptocurrency wallets and how much cryptocurrency has gone into those wallets. So, 2024, again, estimated at this point, but we're looking at over $51 billion just going into the addresses or the wallets that we have identified at this point. How much money is actually invested in cryptocurrency right now? So I just got these numbers a few days ago. Currently, there's over $3.6 trillion invested in all cryptocurrency. Over $2 trillion just in Bitcoin. The market cap for Bitcoin, it's higher than silver, precious metals. We're looking at Bitcoin almost as much as Google and Amazon. If you're looking to maybe learn a little bit more about different types of cryptocurrency or want to access what's called a white paper, which I'm going to explain on the next slide, this is a really good website for you to bookmark. You can look at how much has been invested in different types of cryptocurrencies. They'll talk about each cryptocurrency, explain kind of like what its intended purpose is, exactly how it functions, and just all of the up-to-date news on different types of crypto. So I had mentioned the white paper. So Bitcoin was created by someone named Satoshi Nakamoto. Whether that's a real name, a fictitious name, nobody really knows for sure. Nobody knows 100% who Satoshi Nakamoto is, but that is the name used by the person who created Bitcoin and the Bitcoin blockchain. So this person, or we'll say entity that created Bitcoin, created what's called a white paper. And this white paper specifically talks about the intended purpose for Bitcoin, how the blockchain functions, the Bitcoin's intended purpose, and just anything you could possibly want to know about Bitcoin and how it works. I've actually used this several times for prosecutors or judges, for example. I mean, if most of law enforcement don't understand this, I assure you a lot of prosecutors and judges don't either. So these white papers, it's not a bad idea to attach these to maybe discovery or a seizure warrant or police reports that you're turning over to a prosecutor. They can look at this and get a real good feel for what that type of cryptocurrency actually is. So this white paper was created by Satoshi Nakamoto for Bitcoin, but other cryptocurrencies have done the same thing, and they create the white paper as well. So this is the section I want to get through fairly quickly, but I do think it's extremely important to go over common cryptocurrency-related crimes, both for law enforcement, because we're going to be seeing these cases coming into us by victims, and for those of you who maybe aren't in the law enforcement realm, please educate people, friends, family. If you're involved in certain types of organizations, please share this information. Ransomware, no, I would say this is normally involving larger companies, healthcare, even government. But I have seen ransomware scams involving just like our local residents also. So essentially ransomware, it's a type of malware that holds victim data hostage. This is this red window over here. I've seen that several times. It basically says we have access to your computer and all your files. If you want access to it again, you will pay us X amount of dollars in cryptocurrency. You can see this one in particular directs the user to send, it's only $300 worth of Bitcoin, and it gives the Bitcoin address. Because it's only $300, I'm quite confident this was sent to just a private residence somewhere. If we're talking large companies, healthcare, hospitals, things like that, you're going to be talking millions of dollars. Rug pulls are unfortunately fairly common. These are typically when there is maybe a new cryptocurrency, a new token, an NFT, which we'll talk about. It's a type of cryptocurrency. these companies or entities will promote this new cryptocurrency and say, hey, this is the next big thing, invest all your money into it. And after everyone invests their money into it, the entity or the promoter takes the money and disappears, hence the rug pull. Hacks, we're not going to get into the specific type of hacks, but yes, these different cryptocurrency exchanges, which is essentially a bank for cryptocurrency. So they're crypto services. Anybody can just get their computer hacked into as well, which would then allow the hacker to potentially access the user's cryptocurrency wallet and access the cryptocurrency. So I think at least these two examples on here are both cryptocurrency exchanges. So just think if somebody was able to hack into a bank and they could access every user's online banking, they'd walk away with quite a few $1 million. That's similar to when an exchange is hacked into. Money mules are extremely common. Sometimes law enforcement doesn't really know what to do with them. But essentially a money mule is most of the time they don't really know that they're involved in criminal activity. So these crypto scams or scammers, they will reach out to people and say, hey, do you want a work from home job, or do you need a little extra money? And they'll just be asked to essentially receive money, cryptocurrency that is, and then resend it as directed by the scammer. Sometimes the money mules know what they're doing is illegal. Oftentimes they don't. So please, this is another one. Share with your friends and family. If it seems too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. And you should really be asking some additional questions. You don't want to get caught up in receiving cryptocurrency from people you don't know and sending to people you don't know. SIM swapping, kind of sophisticated, kind of not. But this has become over the last year or two much more popular. So it's essentially somebody either calling a cell phone store or walking into a cell phone store and convincing the employee to terminate service to one phone and activate it on another phone. Once that happens, the scammer, we'll call them, that has the new active phone starts getting all the alerts, passwords, access to accounts, and if the previous user of that phone number had crypto wallets, sometimes they're able to access that. So we find that sometimes it's just a naive cell phone store employee, kind of knew better, knew their policy, knew that they were supposed to ask for ID. They shouldn't do this over the phone, but they do it anyways. Or it could be that the scammer personally knows someone at a cell phone store, and their personal contact at that cell phone store knows what they're doing and will willingly do that for them. So if you ever on your own personal phone, if you start getting messages, you're getting locked out of everything, I would start making some phone calls immediately, freezing accounts, calling your cell phone store, and figuring out what's going on. Pig butchering is a term actually created by the scammers overseas. It essentially means fattening up a hog before slaughter. And the reason they call it that is because the scammers, they take their time with these pig butchering cases. Normally it's romance scams or long-term investment scams to where they gain the trust of the potential victim. And that's kind of the fattening up the hog before the slaughter, and the slaughter is when they take all the money. So if you ever hear that term, that's exactly what it's referring to. Crypto ATMs or crypto kiosks are very common. If you haven't paid attention to them, actually, I think well, it's a couple slides from now, but I have a really good website you can go to. You can type in your local address. You might even be able to do it by zip code, and it will show you where all of the crypto ATMs are in your area. I find that a lot of convenience stores, gas stations, vape shops, things like that carry these Bitcoin kiosks. And essentially what they are, a couple of them function a little bit different, but I'll talk about the most common. So the most common type is you literally take cash, you put it in the machine, and you are buying cryptocurrency, and you're giving the address where you want the cryptocurrency to be sent. So these are extremely common with scams. Victims will be contacted. Maybe somebody's impersonating their local law enforcement or the local court saying, hey, you have this outstanding warrant. We need you to go to your local bank, pull out $10,000, take it to your local crypto ATM, and send the cryptocurrency to, whatever address the suspect gives. That's fairly common, or virus pop-ups on computers. That's fairly common, to where that can transition into a victim being told to take cash to one of these machines. But that's essentially what they do. Is you can buy cryptocurrency and you send the cryptocurrency. Of course, cryptocurrency is not a physical coin or token that you can hold. It's all digital. It's all online. So yeah, you don't walk away with a physical coin, but it's all done online. With these Bitcoin or crypto ATMs, Bitcoin is by far the most popular. Some of them do support a few other different types of cryptocurrency. Some of them will support Ethereum and a few others, but Bitcoin is by far the most common. And that's one of the reasons I said earlier that most often scams are involving Bitcoin. It's just because it's the easiest for potential victims to find and to buy. And then from there, the scammers will swap the Bitcoin into other types of cryptocurrency. With these ATMs or kiosks, the fees are extremely high. I would say on average about 20%. I've seen as high as 30%. And just speaking in my experience, most people, if it's a legitimate transaction, you want to purchase something with cryptocurrency, why are you going to lose 20 or 30%? You can create a wallet within seconds on your laptop or your cell phone, and it's a minuscule fee compared to one of these. What else? There are some, not as many of these companies cooperate like this, but there still are some crypto ATM companies that will reimburse victims, not all the money, but the transaction fee, which would be about the 20%. I know Athena ATM is one. I believe Bitcoin Depot is doing it again. There are a couple out there. What we will see is oftentimes victims will be told to go to multiple ATMs in one day, just so you're not trying to, different companies have different limits. So, one company may have a limit of $15,000 a day. So the scammers will have the victims go to multiple ATMs so they can still hit their $100,000 in a day, for example. Most of these ATM companies are going to leave the victim or the user with some sort of receipt. The one on the left here, I believe that's Bitcoin Depot. Yep. This one shows all the information we need for law enforcement to trace this. Tells us how much was sent, the date, the time, the Bitcoin address it was sent to. CoinMe, unfortunately, they do not put anything useful on there. And that's part because their platform just functions differently. Law enforcement will have to reach out to CoinMe to get those details. Sometimes that takes quite some time, which kind of puts us behind the 8 ball in trying to recover the funds. This one on the right, I want to say might be CoinHub. I could be wrong on that, but this one, the receipt or the transaction information was sent to the victim's cell phone by text message. So this one, you can see a partial Bitcoin address. Some of the sophisticated cryptocurrency tools, such as the Merkle Science Tracker tool, you can identify that full Bitcoin address with this amount of information, and that will then help law enforcement trace those funds and hopefully recover some of it. So I had mentioned a website you can go to try to find local cryptocurrency ATMs in your area. There are a couple out there. So if you just do a Google search, you'll probably find a couple. But this coinatmradar.com is a very common one. Just to kind of give you an idea. And this was several months ago. There's probably more now. But I had searched the location I'm in right now. I had searched and there were 20 crypto ATMs within two miles of my location. And that's kind of in the suburbs of Milwaukee. Some other scams, very common for these scammers to reach out to victims through social media like Facebook, WhatsApp, extremely common. I probably get added, my phone number on WhatsApp, I get added to cryptocurrency investment groups probably once or twice a week. They're all scams. They're absolutely all scams. Telegram, also fairly common. Investment scams. The scammers are actually creating investment websites. They're all fake, but the potential victim will get a login. They think they're logging into an actual investment account. It is not real. The scammers are going to make it look like they turned your $20,000 worth of cryptocurrency into 1.2 million quickly. That's just what they do. Then the victim throw some more money in because they see how profitable it's going to be. Eventually, when they want to withdraw their money, which isn't actually in an account, they're told that they have to pay several $1,000s more for some sort of tax or fee normally. If the victim pays that, that's when the scammer will typically stop talking to them. Sometimes the investment website disappears. So if someone's reaching out to you to invest in cryptocurrency, it's probably a scam, and definitely ask some questions. Like I said, romance scams are very common. Some of these scammers do target the elderly or more people more susceptible to scams, but I'm not sure if I have a couple of the charts in this presentation or not. But if you look at the age range of people that are reporting these scams, it's actually all over the place. I mean, we're talking from 20 years old to, 70, 80 years old. So it's not just one group of people. Third-party investigators. There are some legitimate companies out there. So what happens is when someone becomes victimized and they lose cryptocurrency that through deceit, they may report it to that IC3 database. They may put something on social media to where people can find that someone was a victim. Also, sometimes the actual scammer will reach back out to that specific victim, but posing as a third-party investigator saying, hey, if you pay us $10,000, we promise you we will be able to recover your funds. The victim's just being re-victimized. Like I said, there are some legitimate investigators out there that are they're trying to do the right thing and help victims. So I don't want to say that there's none out there, but there are definitely a lot of scammers out there that are just trying to recover more funds. Even with the the legitimate ones, oftentimes they are still limited on what they can do. I'm not saying the work they do can't be useful because, again, the majority of law enforcement across not just the US, but the world don't have the tools or the knowledge to work these cases. But ultimately, even these third parties, they don't have the authority to get a warrant from the local courts or from the federal courts. So they may write up their report. It still normally has to get referred to law enforcement, and then law enforcement will still have to do what they need to do. So just keep that in mind. Again, there are some out there that are really trying to do the right thing, but there are plenty that are not. And then any crime that's out there that involves money, it's still being committed, but with cryptocurrency. Drug trafficking, terrorism finance, human trafficking, gun trafficking, child sexual abuse material, which is essentially child pornography, anything on the dark web, it's all cryptocurrency. So that's the part I wanted to get through pretty quick. Now I want to start covering some topics that may need a little bit more instruction for you. So what is cryptocurrency? We hear the term quite often. If you've ever heard the terms digital currency, virtual asset, it's all the same thing, different term, same definition. It's a digital monetary unit that's transacted and stored on a blockchain. Cryptocurrency, originally created to be decentralized, there would be no third party or government involved or having control. It's more so peer-to-peer transactions. There are now some exceptions, and some cryptocurrency is centralized, meaning there are third parties or governments involved. What is the blockchain? That's kind of the two main things, right? Cryptocurrency and the blockchain. The blockchain is what the cryptocurrency transacts on. It's a public and immutable chronological digital ledger of the transactions. So essentially, it's a digital ledger. That's it. It's going to show all the transaction details, date, time, how much was sent, what the fee was, who the sending address was, who the recipient was. All of that's going to be on there. And like I said, it's immutable, meaning it cannot be changed. Once it's on the blockchain, it is there forever. Why is it called a blockchain? The reason is exactly what the term blockchain would imply. It's made up of multiple blocks. Each block contains, depends on the type of blockchain, but each block contains numerous confirmed or verified transactions, and that is one block. That block then gets linked to the next block, and so on and so on. Miners and validators, if you've ever heard of like Bitcoin mining, we're not going to get into that today. That's a really advanced topic, but just know that the miners or validators, depends on which blockchain you're referring to, they have different titles. They're the ones who are essentially confirming and validating those transactions. Once they're confirmed, they will appear on the blockchain. So what is a cryptocurrency address, specifically a public address or a public key? It's the alphanumeric address to which funds are sent. Just think of a bank account. If I want to send funds to your bank, I need your bank account number. If I want to send you an email, I need your email address. That is what the public key or the public address is. That you're completely safe sharing with other people. And in fact, if you don't share it, nobody can send you any cryptocurrency. So the private key or the private address is used to sign transactions and provides the ability to spend the cryptocurrency under your control or in your wallet. A wallet creates the public and private key pairs. Whoever controls that private key controls the funds. We're going to talk about private keys a little bit more later on. So if you don't fully understand that's okay. We'll definitely talk about it more. But just know that the private key, you will absolutely not share with anyone. If you shared your private key with me, I can take your funds. So from a law enforcement standpoint, if we're executing a search warrant or executing an arrest and we come across someone's private key, we want that. If we think that they're stealing cryptocurrency or they're a drug trafficker and they have their illicit funds in cryptocurrency, we get that private key that we can get those funds. And then a wallet, I kind of explained that a little bit. A wallet is just the software that manages the key pairs. Again, it creates automatically the public and the private key pairs, and the wallet's used to send and receive the cryptocurrency. Difference between fiat and cryptocurrency. Fiat money is the typical money we think of, your cash, your money in your bank account. It's issued and backed by the government. Cryptocurrency, digital asset, Typically, again, I said there are a couple exceptions. Typically, it's decentralized. It's not backed by a government or a third party. Like I said, of course, there's always exceptions to the rule. It's created to be decentralized. There are some countries that have, I don't know how well it's taken off just yet, but there are at least some countries that have tried creating their own national cryptocurrency. And then I mentioned how stablecoins, law enforcement, we really like stablecoins, so do the money launderers, but we like stablecoins because at least some of them or many of them are centralized. And that gives us some additional options in trying to seize or recover those. Comparing fiat and crypto a little bit, kind of touched on a couple of these areas. So fiat, which is the US dollar there, again, it is backed by the government. Cryptocurrency, generally no, except for those few countries that have created their own national cryptocurrency. Cap on the amount of money that can be created. As we know, the US government just keeps printing and printing money. No, there's no cap on that. Cryptocurrency, in most cases, there is. Bitcoin, for example, I believe it is about 21 million Bitcoin is the most that can ever be created. So that there is a max on a lot of cryptocurrency. Can you do person-to-person or peer-to-peer transactions? Yeah, you can with cryptocurrency, absolutely. With cash, you can. If you're doing bank accounts, just know that you need a third party to assist you with that transaction. And then this is where it really comes in handy, this last one here. I'll skip to the last one. So history of cash transactions or the existence of a ledger. With cash or fiat currency, as long as it's cash, there's no record whatsoever. I could go step into the next room and buy a car from someone, pay them $10,000 cash, and other than me and that person, there will never be a record of that. Cryptocurrency, as I explained, there is the blockchain. It will never be changed. Once it's on there, it's there forever. Cryptocurrency is described as pseudo-anonymous. We may not always know who's sending or receiving it. There's certain ways we can try to identify them, and we'll get to that later. But when it comes to ledgers in the transaction records, cryptocurrency is absolutely great. Robert, were there a couple questions coming in, or is that some other alert?
There's questions coming in, but I'm answering them as we go. So,
Okay.
All right,
Perfect. I'll keep going.
Okay.
So, real brief. Some people kind of ask, like, well, why does cryptocurrency even have value? Like, it's fake. It's fake money, right? Well, what gives something value? Kind of what somebody will pay for it, right? So supply and demand. Like I said, most cryptocurrencies have a maximum supply that can ever be created. Well, supply and demand. As the supply gets lower, the demand is going to go up and the value is going to get up. Some cryptocurrencies, the developers or the creators, what they can do is what's called a burn. And they can burn, for example, millions of those tokens of that particular cryptocurrency, which will reduce the available supply. That can have an effect on the value. And the rest is similar to like any other investment, stock, mutual fund that you would do, news coverage, regulation on a particular stock or cryptocurrency. Those are going to affect the value as well. Earlier I said we're not really going to get into the process of mining cryptocurrency, which we're not, but just know that specifically mining Bitcoin is extremely expensive. There are not a lot of single individual people mining Bitcoin anymore, just because of how expensive the equipment is that you need and the electricity that you need to mine the cryptocurrency. So just think of anything else. I listed a car as an example. If the cost to produce a car goes up, well, the value of that car is going to go up to the consumer. It's exactly the same with cryptocurrency. Here are some of the more common cryptocurrency or virtual currency types. Again, I mentioned Bitcoin on the top left, by far the most popular. Last time I checked, the value for one Bitcoin was still over $100,000 per Bitcoin. Maybe it dropped a little bit, but it should be pretty close. Ethereum or Ether, extremely common. Monero is a very popular, what's called a privacy coin. We're not going to get into privacy coins today, but just know that there are some cryptocurrencies that take additional steps to protect the identity of the user, the sender and the receiver. Some of the privacy coins, there are certain things we can do to try to trace it. Some things we can infer, and then Monero, just know that you're probably never going to be able to trace Monero, at least at this point. Of course, technology is always changing. I've heard of a few companies come out and say they were able to do it. I've never seen any study or any proof that it's been done. Tether, bottom left here. In my opinion, the most popular stablecoin used for money laundering. And Dogecoin right in the middle. Most of you have probably heard of that. That's the cryptocurrency that Elon Musk pushes. So cryptocurrency addresses. We've got Bitcoin on the top here. Typically, it's going to be between 26 and 35 alphanumeric characters. All Bitcoin addresses will begin with a 1, a 3, or a BC1. At least at this point, that any of the Bitcoin addresses will begin with one of those. Ethereum blockchain, everything is going to begin with a 0x. Monero, remember that's one of the privacy coins. I said they take extra steps and create extra layers to protect the user, the identity of the user. I mean, but look at how many alphanumeric characters there are there. We're looking at 95. And then Litecoin, I still see Litecoin used occasionally, but that's what the Litecoin address is going to look like, just to kind of give you a few examples. So let's talk about wallets a little bit more. It's very important for anyone in law enforcement who's going to be working these cases, or anyone who maybe wants to start getting into the cryptocurrency realm and maybe doing some investing or trading, just buying some and holding on to it. There's different types of wallets, and each one you access differently. Maybe security is a little bit better on different ones. So let's talk about that for a little bit. So again, a wallet is the digital software or a service that maintains the private and the public key pair. It essentially gives you the control over the cryptocurrency. Each wallet can and probably will contain a multitude of key pairs. Just think of how many different types of cryptocurrencies there are, different blockchains there are. Some cryptocurrencies, specifically Bitcoin, you can have hundreds or thousands of addresses within one wallet. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. But just know that as far as the key pairs in a wallet, that there can be a lot of them. There are a couple different categories of wallets. There's custodial and non-custodial is one category. So custodial would be consistent with an exchange. If you're familiar with like Coinbase or Binance, Kraken, those are custodial wallets. What that means is that service or that company, they hold the private key. They function almost identical to your average bank. You deposit money into your bank. Who's actually holding the money? It's the bank. It's not you. You trust the bank to do that. It's exactly the same with these exchanges, or also known as a virtual asset service provider or a VASP. Same thing, a VASP or an exchange. So they actually hold the funds. As law enforcement, we love that because we can serve a seizure warrant if we're able to maybe trace stolen cryptocurrency to one of these custodial wallets. We send a seizure warrant to Coinbase, for example. They will freeze that account and they will transfer the funds to law enforcement so we can return those to a victim. There are then non-custodial wallets, which are kind of the opposite. The person who holds the private key to that is the user. If I install, let's say Exodus, that's a type of non-custodial wallet. If I install Exodus wallet on my cell phone, I hold the private key. Now, everybody, because of the public blockchain, can see the funds going in and out of my wallet, but law enforcement, they can see it there. They can't touch it. So the exchanges or the VASPs are very useful in the law enforcement world. So a lot of people, the exchanges are very user friendly. You can easily buy and sell cryptocurrency. You can move your crypto into cash, push it into your linked bank account. Your bank account is linked to the exchange, so you can buy cryptocurrency using the money in your bank account. It's very user friendly. You can access the wallet extremely easily from any internet connected device, but somebody else has control over it. So if you're going to get into the cryptocurrency space, you just really need to weigh your options and determine what's best for you and what you're looking for. There's also hot wallet versus cold wallet. A hot wallet just means that the private key is always connected to the internet. A cold wallet, and I'm going to show you some examples of that. The private key is kept separate from the internet. It's just another layer of security to where the scammers or the bad guys, they would need to actually get a hold of not just your device, but they would have to get a hold of your private key, which you could potentially store somewhere else. And don't worry, I'm going to show you a couple examples of that in a couple slides. So we've got the web wallets, which is your exchanges. You've got your mobile and software wallets, which are essentially operate the same way. Just kind of, is it going on your cell phone versus laptop? And then cold wallets. So your web wallets, again, are your exchanges. Kind of talked about some of this already. You access these through a web browser. Go to Google Chrome. You just go to the Kraken website or the Coinbase website, and you log in using your password that you created when you set up your account. And most of them are going to have a two-factor authentication. Maybe you get a code sent to your email or text to your phone. Again, with these, you have a little less control over it. You have more access to your money and being able to buy and trade and sell those sorts of things, but somebody else is holding your cryptocurrency. And I won't get into it again, but like I mentioned, we call it kind of like the choke point where law enforcement can get access to the funds. And the last thing I'll mention about these exchanges is at least all of them in the US are required to, and many overseas do as well. They obtain what's called Know Your Customer documents or KYC. That would be ensuring that they identify the account holder. Maybe a selfie, a photo of their ID, email address, phone number, those sorts of things. So again, cryptocurrency may be pseudo-anonymous, but if you transfer your funds to wallet to wallet to wallet, and it makes it to an exchange, we're probably going to be able to identify someone. So next category I mentioned, software and mobile wallets. It's just software that you download onto your cell phone or your laptop. You control the private key. There's no third party that controls it. And very easy. I mean, I have one on my cell phone. I log into my phone. I just tap the app and it's open. It's that simple. When it comes to seizures with software or mobile wallets, they're extreme. Oh, let me throw out the caveat that seizures of cryptocurrency in general are very time sensitive. but especially these types of wallets and cold storage wallets. If I can't access those funds immediately, someone else can move those funds, someone else who has access to the private key. I can install this software on multiple devices. So if someone has access to it on another device, they can then transfer the funds as well. So as far as the law enforcement standpoint, it's important that we are able to access these funds quickly. And I mentioned cold storage wallets. Here are a couple there are so many out there now, but two that have been around for a while are Trezor and Ledger. They're not super expensive. They have a few different models out there depending on, what features you want it to have, maybe how many different types of cryptocurrencies they support, but $150 to $250, and you can get one of these wallets. I recommend using one of these if you're going to be maybe holding on to cryptocurrency for a long period of time and it's large quantity. And again, the reason being is this device, it kind of looks like a thumb drive here. You disconnect it from your laptop and it's no longer connected to the internet. It's that thumb drive looking thing that's the actual private key. So you are keeping that separate from the internet. It's just there, of course, there are certain ways scammers or hackers can access certain things, but it's just another layer of security. So let's talk about recovery seeds here. So the software mobile wallets, the cold storage wallets, they all have what's called a recovery seed or a recovery seed phrase. This is kind of what one looks like. It's going to be normally, there are a couple exceptions, always an exception, but normally it's going to be 12 to 24 random words that the wallet generates on its own. If you have a wallet and you have your recovery seed, all these wallets are going to recommend you write down the recovery seed and keep it somewhere safe. They say, don't take photos with your cell phone. Don't type it into the notes section on your iPhone, those sorts of things. But regardless of where you keep it, if I come across your recovery seed, I can go to my computer or my cell phone, I can put in your recovery seed, I can recreate your wallet. I will have access to all of your cryptocurrency. So the recovery seed is a form of the private key that I mentioned. Do not share with anyone. Here's a few more examples of what recovery seeds look like. If you are doing one of the mobile or software wallets, it's probably going to do like an auto print, what you're seeing on the top two examples. With the Trezor or the Ledger, you're probably going to be looking at something more like what you see on the bottom, where it comes with a card and it suggests that you write out the recovery seed. If you lose your ability to access your cold storage wallet, for example, you forget your password, you lose your recovery seed, you will never be able to access your funds again. It looks like I got rid of that slide, but yeah, there's been some stories, some headlines in the news, especially with Bitcoin getting higher, of people who accidentally threw out their cold storage wallet and they don't have the recovery seed anymore. There were some people out there with hundreds of millions of dollars. They're just not going to be able to access it, unfortunately. Let's go maybe for another 5-10 minutes. We'll take a break, come back, I can finish up, and then we can get right into Roberts here. So coins versus tokens, very simple concept, but most people don't know the difference. There actually is a difference. So Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency. Bitcoin has its own blockchain. So it's the Bitcoin blockchain. So the term coin is a cryptocurrency that operates on its own blockchain. So as I had just mentioned, Bitcoin has its own blockchain. That would mean Bitcoin is a coin. It is not a token. So Bitcoin is the native cryptocurrency on the Bitcoin blockchain, makes it a coin. Seems simple enough. Ethereum. So we've got the Ethereum blockchain, which we'll talk about later. Ether is the native cryptocurrency to the Ethereum blockchain. That makes it a coin. That is the native cryptocurrency. The native will always be referred to as a coin. Now, there are actually many blockchains, which will support cryptocurrencies other than just the native coin or cryptocurrency. The Ethereum blockchain is one of those very popular blockchains that support thousands of cryptocurrencies. So if it is a cryptocurrency that operates or functions on the Ethereum blockchain, that is not that native Ether coin, it will be referred to as a token. So token is simply a cryptocurrency that operates on or rents space from another blockchain. The example I used here is Tether. Tether does not have its own blockchain. It will always function on other blockchains. Tether will always be a token. Here's an image from Merkle Science Tracker, which Robert will show you a little bit more later. You can see this address on the top left. This is an Ethereum address right here, Ethereum blockchain address. And down on the bottom left, it is showing all the cryptocurrencies that are currently on deposit in that address. And we can see here's the ETH is Ether. That's the coin. That's the native cryptocurrency. The other four, they're all tokens. So that is the difference between a coin and a token. Again, fairly simple, but most people don't seem to use the terms correctly. So Bitcoin, as I had mentioned earlier, by far the most popular cryptocurrency out there still. I don't see that changing anytime soon. The maximum that can ever be created is 21 million. And the way Bitcoin works on the Bitcoin blockchain is, let's just say I'm sending one Bitcoin to Robert's address, my address to his. My one Bitcoin will be transacted and it will remove every transaction on any blockchain. There will be a fee that needs to be paid. Depending on the blockchain, the fee gets paid differently. But with Bitcoin, it's going to remove a small amount of Bitcoin from my wallet to cover that fee. That's how it works on the Bitcoin blockchain. With Ethereum, Ether, again, which is the coin, native cryptocurrency on the Ethereum blockchain, there's not a maximum number that can be created of Ether. That's one of the rare cryptocurrencies. It's an unlimited supply. The way the fees get paid on the Ethereum blockchain, completely different than Bitcoin. So the way it works is if I am transacting, we'll start with the simple one. If I'm just transacting Ether, if I want to send Ether from my address to Robert's, it will remove a small portion of Ether from my wallet. So that is similar to Bitcoin. Where it is not is these thousands of tokens that are renting space on the Ethereum blockchain. If I transfer Tether from my address to Robert's, the fee, also known as the gas on the Ethereum blockchain, it can't be paid by a token. It has to be paid by that coin, Ether. So when I transfer Tether from mine to Robert's, it will remove a small portion of Ether from my wallet to cover the fee or the gas. If I don't have any Ether in my wallet, I will be incapable of transacting that Tether or other token. Now, this is really important for law enforcement because if I were to, for example, access a suspect's wallet, their cell phone, or recreate their wallet, and I see they have Tether or another token in their wallet, I will not be able to transfer it from their wallet to my law enforcement wallet unless there's Ether. It'll be stuck there. So the way that gets done is I would need, as law enforcement, would need my own Ether. I would have to transfer it to the suspect's wallet. then there will be Ether there, which would allow me to transact the Tether to the law enforcement wallet. So that's something important to keep in mind with fees, especially for law enforcement.
And you keep on learning. So this is not one of these sessions that is going to make you an expert at the end of it, but it'll give you a lot to think about. It'll give you a lot of ways that you can, or give you a lot of thoughts on how or what to go read and watch and that kind of stuff. I actually, when I got into the crypto for the first time, I actually just started watching YouTube videos, believe it or not. And that was like 10 years ago, right? I read every article I could find about it. I, watched YouTube all the time, talked to a lot of people that were involved in it, that kind of stuff. So I had some really good mentors as well. So um, yeah, so do all that kind of stuff. Don't let your education stop here. This is just a primer, if you will. It's really getting you started. So there's a lot of stuff to learn. Um, Scott, I do have a question about your contact, whether you make a contact available. I'm gonna leave that to you. I'm not gonna put your name out and contact out there unless you want it to be. I'll leave it to you whether you want to put your contact information out. Um,
Yeah, I have no problem with that at all. I feel like people find it anyways, so so I'll just make it easy. Um, I I do believe that Merkle Science is making the presentation available to everyone, right? Would it be maybe easy for you guys to send out my information with that, or otherwise I can just provide it at the end of today as well?
Okay, yeah, we are making the presentation available, so it won't be immediately after this presentation, but shortly thereafter, everyone that's signed up for this presentation will receive an additional email with a link to the video recording of the webinar. So, I think we had 650-ish signups. We have about 1/3 present for the actual presentation. So everybody, whether you made it or not, will get a chance to see the presentation if they wish. Um, so, um, Scott, can I take just a few minutes to answer a few questions?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah, then we'll get started. That would because we have a lot of them. I've answered quite a few as we went
Saw
through,
that.
but
Great
um,
questions.
yeah, good thoughts here. I think the one that I'm going to pick up right here is it possible to recover stolen funds that have gone through a mixer? So here's the deal: mixers are not rocket science, but they're not exactly easy either. Now, there's some that are better than others. There's some mixtures out there that are so fundamental that it's any good investigator will go one side and come out the other and still be onto the crypto that was gone. And some are just incredibly difficult. That companies like Merkle and some of the other big companies in the blockchain space really apply a lot of work to get through. And when it comes out the other side, it's not a question of whether this is your crypto, because we can't always say. Now we can give you a probabilistic determination whether it's your crypto. We can say, hey, yeah, we think 70% is here, and went to this address or this location. So yeah, mixers, depending on who has launched them and what their purpose are and what chain they're on, can be very, very good, and very difficult to get through. And then, of course, sometimes they're just so elementary that anyone can get through them. So, love the question. It shows you're thinking. I appreciate it. The answer is kind of twofold: yes and no. It just depends. That's a good lawyer answer, right? It just depends. So if you ever talk to your favorite lawyer, that's what they'll say. Anyway, I'll let Scott get back to it. Let's see. Do we have any more questions that I think Scott might want to jump in on? Um, we did that one. Let's see. We did have one question about law enforcement. An law enforcement officer in India was talking about getting through a centralized exchange. Centralized exchanges are really where the blockchain ends and where it begins. So once say you transfer 50 Bitcoins to a centralized exchange, they essentially credit your account. They put it in a hot wallet or a cold wallet, and they credit your account that value. And then if you want to send it somewhere, then they'll send it for you. But what happens in the middle is really off chain. And if you want to know what that is, you're going to have to get some kind of production order or some kind of judicial process, depending on what jurisdiction you're in, and compel them to give it to you, if that's possible. I'm not an expert in law in India, so I can't really tell you what you need. But some kind of judicial process is probably going to be warranted. So now, Scott, we also had a question about the supply of Bitcoin. Yes, different cryptos have different supplies. It just depends on the creators and what they had in mind. Now, Scott had mentioned that 21 million Bitcoins are available through the Bitcoin blockchain when it's fully mined, and about 2140. But the truth of the matter is, given the amount of Bitcoin that's lost to wallets that are unrecoverable, or other, maybe a person is deceased and takes their private keys to the grave with them, something like that. We're looking at maybe somewhere between 16 and 18 million total is what we probably will end up with. And then you look at all the whales around the world that are accumulating crypto, MicroStrategy, BlackRock. The governments are now talking about strategic holdings of crypto. The actual amount of crypto that the general public can swap back and forth may come down to just a few million when they're all done. So keep that in mind as you think about crypto. This is not investment advice, so please don't take it as I'm just making you think about how the market might react or not. Is there don't just move on? Yeah, I think the rest is good. Scott, any place you want to weigh in on this?
No, well, I guess I'll touch on two things that might be partially repeating you. But yeah, about the mixers, yeah, like Robert said, no two mixers are created equal. I've easily been able to trace through a couple, and then there were others that it just wasn't going to happen. What's great about tracing tools like Merkle Science is they have experts to where this is all they do. So if I came across a mixer that was too complicated for me, they are there to support those sorts of things. If it's a mixer that can be traced through, they're going to be able to do it. And then what was the other? Oh, the law enforcement in India about centralized exchanges. Yeah, I mean, it's hit or miss. I mean, you work these cases long enough, you know which exchanges are going to comply, which ones won't. But even that, it changes constantly. I mean, in the US, we've got a really good network of crypto investigators throughout the US that communicate daily. And a lot of the exchanges in the Seychelles, they will not comply whatsoever. But then a few weeks ago, I started talking to some investigators, and they're starting to provide some information. Maybe it's not fully a seizure yet, but they'll provide something. Maybe they'll freeze an account. So it changes constantly. Only thing I can say is don't get frustrated. Keep trying. It eventually it might work out for you. I mean, I can tell you that in my experience, local exchanges that are actually like the headquarters is in India, they won't provide us records in the US. That's at least my experience. Now, if it's Binance and the account holder just happens to live in India, that I can normally get those records. So don't get frustrated, just keep trying.
Yeah, excellent advice. Don't get frustrated. The blockchain never forgets, right? Um, and this is the last one that we'll get back onto. I just think this is kind of important. The question is, I see a clear emphasis on putting USDT as a riskier stablecoin. Now we're getting ahead of ourselves, but this is worth answering. USDT is United States stablecoin Tether. And so the question is it riskier? And does that mean that USDC, which is US stablecoin Circle, would be a better, safer choice when it comes to stablecoins? Now, here's the deal, guys and gals. Sorry, USDT was launched by Tether a long time ago. It's been around for a long, long time. It is available on just about every EVM type blockchain out there. Not everyone, but most of them, most preferred ones anyway. It is also a preferred token of listed actors. All right, I'm just gonna be blunt with you, and it's preferred. USDT on Tron is probably the most preferred right now. That's the way I see it. The reason for that is USDC is created by Circle. Circle is a U.S. company and is compliant by the very nature of their jurisdiction, and they must be responsive to law enforcement. Not only that, there's also a way to block list USDC and USDT. USDT, I think, takes a little more work to block list than USDC does. So if you're looking at risk in a stablecoin and you're looking at just these two stablecoins, not the rest of them, just these two, USDT is the more risky token. But there's a lot more stablecoins out there that are way riskier than that. So I'll just leave it at that. Scott, after you, sir, and then I'll get started whenever you're done. Looks like we got about an hour and a half, so plenty of time to go, and I'll follow up.
I'll try not to talk too long.
No, take your time.
So,
we have plenty of time.
So yeah, I have a couple examples right at the end of this presentation, and a couple of those examples are covering stablecoins, blocklisting them, that sort of thing. Lately, I mean, I would say in the last, just since October, I've been able to blacklist, which for those of you who don't know, it's essentially freezing the stablecoin. 1 point, maybe almost 1.5 million Tether USDT, which is about $1.5 million. USDC, almost 800,000 USDC. Again, that's almost $800,000 just in the last few months. So I've been having some pretty good success, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit at the end here. So let's talk about blockchains, tracing cryptocurrency a little bit, and we're going to touch on the Bitcoin blockchain tracing, and then the Ethereum. So like Robert said, nobody's going to walk away today, unless you already are an expert, of course. Nobody's going to walk away today being an expert from 3 hours of cryptocurrency. It's a crash course. We want to show you everything that's out there. And if you choose to continue your training and learning, what you can become comfortable with. I've been to well over a dozen classes and certifications, probably closer to 20. I'm learning things all the time. Cryptocurrency space it's very intriguing. But anyways, let's get into this. So blockchains. Currently over 1,000 different blockchains. We're going to focus mostly on Bitcoin and Ethereum. If you become very comfortable with Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Tron, at least in my experience, as an investigator, you're going to understand 80 to 90% of the cases we see. I think Robert was spot on that the scammers, the money launderers, Tether, and especially moving it to the Tron blockchain, that's where I almost always see the funds going. There, of course, like I said, there are over 1,000 blockchains. There are many more out there. There are plenty of others that are common, but in my experience, these are going to be the top 3. So specific to Bitcoin transactions, the important parts of a transaction that you're going to find are the actual addresses. You're going to have the inputs, which are the sending addresses. You're going to have the outputs, which are the receiving addresses. And keep in mind, you can have multiple inputs. You can have one input. You can have multiple outputs. You can have one. I'm going to show you some examples of that. You're going to have, of course, the cryptocurrency amount that was sent, the transaction fee, since we now all know every transaction will have a fee. Fee may be paid differently, but there will be a fee. And then at the completion of the transaction, you will have a transaction hash or a transaction ID. So what we're looking at here, we're going to start with the Bitcoin transactions. There are more parts to it than like an Ethereum transaction. So it does take some people a little bit more to learn, although I prefer tracing the Bitcoin transactions. It's just, it can be a little more certain with the flow of funds, but we'll get into this a little bit. So Bitcoin transactions. What you can see here is the transaction ID. So this is technically 2 transactions. You can see the line splitting down the middle. That's one above and one below. So this top number 66D53 and also down here the 978DC, those are transaction IDs or transaction hashes. That's going to be the unique number for that one transaction. We'll never repeat. Here you can see the sending transaction. I'm sorry, the sending address, which is referred to as the input in a Bitcoin transaction. If we look down at this lower transaction, again, we see one input. That's the sending address. So if I was sending funds to Robert, my address would be right here. Now, next to it, it is showing how much Bitcoin I'm sending him. And off to the right, we can see two outputs. So these are the two receiving addresses. Like I said, you can have multiple inputs, you can have multiple outputs, you can have one of each. With Bitcoin transactions, well, I'll get to that on the next slide. And of course, you're going to have a date and time of the transaction as well. This right here is what we're looking at is a free open source tool. There are quite a few of them out there. They do some of what Merkle Science Tracker does. Merkle Science is going to put it in a much easier layout. All the information is going to be at your fingertips. Most of us are visual learners. It's going to put together this great graph to really help you understand what's happening, help your prosecutor or whoever it may be. But you can do some work in these free open source tools as well. Same transactions here, just pointing out on these free open source tools. This particular tool has these little like round balls, this red ball, blue ball, but each one's going to have a little bit different shape there. All that is, for example, if I wanted to, this top one here, the input, the 17H6, it shows I'm sending the 0.94483 and so on. If I click on this blue ball, what it's going to do is take me backwards and show me where the 0.9448 came from. In which case, that's what this bottom transaction actually is. That's why I included two. So it's going to show us this bottom transaction. We can see this 17H as one of these transactions here. It received the 0.944. In this transaction, some funds also went to this other address, but let's say we're interested in the 0.944. We can see where it came from here. It came from the 1MWP. Well, what if we wanted to find out where that address got the funds? Unfortunately, this arrow's covering it right now, but there's another blue ball right there, like you can see on the top. We click on that blue ball, and it will show us where the 1.05 came from. And we can just keep doing that. Ideally, what we're looking for is a crypto service where it came from, such as an exchange, because then we can identify who that account belongs to. So I'm showing you tracing backwards, but of course you can also continue tracing the funds forward. So looking at this top transaction again, we see the 17H is the input, it's the sending address. Sends the 0.94, gets split up between these two addresses. Let's say we want to start with the top one. The 0.518, we want to see where that went. We would literally just click that blue ball and it's going to show us the next transaction where the 0.5186 went. So that is how we can use these free tools to do some tracing. This is can't recall, this might be blockchain.com, this one specifically, I don't recall, but this is another free open source tool. It's showing the exact same two transactions, just showing it a slight different layout. This is how this tool shows it. But you can actually see the exact same address, the 17H6, the amount it's sent, 0.944 and so on. This one doesn't use the red or the blue ball. It has an arrow. If you ever see these two little squares like this here, that's to do copy and paste. It'll copy it to your clipboard for you. The one thing I'm going to mention with these free tools, you can see how this one shows a US dollar value next to the Bitcoin value. Most of these free tools, it's going to show what the US dollar value is today. It's not, I mean, these transactions occurred in 2017. It's not going to show what the value was back in 2017. What you would need to do is go to another free open source tool and look at what the historical Bitcoin value was. Now, tools like Merkle Science Tracker will show you what the value was on the day of the transaction. So keep that in mind if you are working investigations. If your victim said, hey, you know, I sent $5,000, but now 3 months later you're doing the tracing and you see the dollar amount is nowhere near 5,000, it may very well be just because the value of cryptocurrency fluctuated. And this particular tool, it just shows additional details in here regarding the fees. Up here, again, we're not going to get into the mining and the blockchain too much more, but this block ID, that is the completed block up there. You could click on the block 812034, and it would start getting into the details about the mining and the validation of those transactions. So this is the fun part. This is actually understanding the models of how the Bitcoin and the Ethereum models function with transactions. UTXO is specific to Bitcoin, and the account model is going to be, at least what we're talking about today, is going to be specific to the Ethereum. So UTXO, it stands for unspent transaction output. What this means is if in someone's wallet, there is a Bitcoin address, and I want to send, let's say I have 1 Bitcoin in there, and I want to send Robert 0.25 Bitcoin. The way Bitcoin blockchain functions is it cannot send partial amounts. It has to send that entire 1 Bitcoin. Only 0.25 Bitcoin goes to Robert, but then there is a UTXO or a change address in which the remaining 0.75 minus the fee will come back to my wallet. So that's, I know that's maybe a little confusing if you don't have a lot of experience, but I'm going to show you several examples here and why that makes sense. So I like to describe the way Bitcoin works is exactly like cash. Oh, let's go back here. So let's say I am making a purchase at a local store and I have a $20 bill and the cashier needs only $15. Well, I can't cut my $20 bill into small pieces and pay the cashier. So I have to give the cashier the entire $20 bill. It's exactly the same way as Bitcoin and all the funds in that particular address. So cashier gets the $15, I'm sorry, the $20 bill. They're going to keep the $15, but the remaining $5 minus the fee, which in this case is $4.50, that is coming back straight back to my wallet. Now, next couple slides, you'll see what I mean, but the user of a crypto wallet can go into the settings and select whether they want the change coming back to your wallet to come back into the same address that it's sent from, or what most people do is the wallet can create a new address every single time you're getting change back to your wallet. And the reason most people choose to do it that way is for law enforcement, we like to identify who a particular address belongs to, for example. But if now there's all these new addresses in the mix, that can be complicated for us to figure out who it belongs to. And at least a lot of people use cryptocurrency because they're trying to be anonymous, right? At least pseudo-anonymous. So one way to do that is to keep using a new address every time. It's all done within the same wallet. So you don't have to go create a new wallet every time. That software for the wallet will automatically create a new address. So here's another example. Hopefully after a few examples, it starts to make sense for everyone. So if I need to pay a cashier $1 and all I have is a $5 bill, my $5, which let's think it's a Bitcoin address, is the input going into the transaction. There are now going to be, well, there's going to be the one output to the cashier. Let's pretend that's a Bitcoin address. They're getting their $1. Now the change is going to be another output, the UTXO address. It's going to be whatever's left over minus the fee. So what we had left over was $4. Subtract the fee, we got $3.90. That is going to come back to my wallet, and probably I set it up to come back in a new address. Now let's look at how that actually looks with cryptocurrency and not paying a cashier. So the top half, this is a free open source tool. Any of you can pull this transaction up. And actually it was the same transaction that I showed you guys earlier. And on the bottom half, that is this transaction graphed out in Merkle Science Tracker. So what we're looking at on the top is we got this address, 1MWP is the input. It's sending the funds into the transaction. We now have two outputs. One is going to be the recipient who we're sending the funds to, and the other one is going to be our change address, the funds that are actually coming back to my wallet. This is how it looks like in Merkle Science Tracker. We've got the same input, sending the same amount into the transaction, and then we've got the two amounts going out. I can tell by looking at this which one is the change address and which one is the recipient. And I'm going to show you in a couple slides here how I figure that out. And the reason that is important is, like I mentioned, we want to identify all the addresses that belong to someone, or even who they belong to. And we call that a cluster. A cluster is all the addresses that are controlled by a single entity. And at the bottom here, I kind of list some reasons why that would be helpful, especially in a criminal investigation. Cluster can identify an overall date range of criminal conduct, the origin of the funds, destination of funds, other victims, increase the amount to seize if we're trying to recover stolen or illicit funds, and then develop money laundering behavior. So for us in law enforcement, just think if I didn't know how to identify a cluster and identify the change address and show this overall, how many addresses belong to the bad guy, the scammer, the overall dollar amount. So if I just knew that one transaction and I went to a prosecutor and said, hey, I think we should prosecute this particular scammer because of this one transaction, they stole $5,000. Now, is it illegal? Yes, of course. Should something be done? Of course. But, prosecutors prioritizing cases versus if I can say, look, here's a single transaction, but this entity controls these 120 addresses. And in the last 6 months, they've moved $14.2 million. And based on this behavior, it looks like, more of this is coming from additional victims. It's going to make a huge difference. So that's why identifying these clusters, it's very important for us. The one other thing on this slide I'll point out is after the UTXO or the change address comes back to the sender's wallet, the funds that came back, it's just part of the overall balance in that wallet or that account. So those funds in future transactions, the funds that came back in as change, they'll just get used in future transactions. So now, how do we identify clusters, right? I kind of gave you the reasons why it's important. Multiple inputs in a transaction can be inferred to be controlled by the same entity, and here's why. So looking at this graph here, what this means is address A and address B are both sending to the same recipient here. So there's no change in this transaction, but we can say that address A and address B are controlled by the same entity. They're going to be in the same cluster. And the reason being is, if you remember, I need to be able to control the private key to sign or approve a transaction. It's all done automatically. I don't have to like type in my private key every time. As long as I access my wallet, it's automatically using my private key. But if I'm trying to send a transaction and Robert, across the country is trying to send a transaction, we can't both be senders in the same transaction. Because we have different private keys, we have different wallets. So if there's a transaction like this and address A is an input and address B is an input, they both share the same private key. Same person controls both of these addresses. So we can say they're both part of the same cluster. Based on the same theory here, this graph is showing two separate transactions. The first one, exactly what we just looked at. Address A is an input, address B is an input in one transaction. We know A and B are controlled by the same entity because of the private key. Now, second transaction, address B is an input, address C is an input. We know both B and C are controlled by the same entity because of the private key. But remember, this first transaction also had address B as an input. So if A and B are controlled by the same, B and C are controlled by the same, well, B is over here. We know C is also part of this overall cluster. A, B, and C are all controlled by the same entity. Now, clustering based on change addresses. It's maybe a little bit more confusing just because there's more factors to consider or more things to infer, but there's a set of guidelines we'll go over, and it's not that difficult. So in this case, we've got 3 inputs for a Bitcoin transaction. One holds 1.5 Bitcoin, the other 2, the other 1. We've got 2 outputs. One received 3.5, the other received 0.5. Now, what we need to figure out is which one is the actual recipient and which one is the change address. Main reason I know the recipient is going to be 3.5 on this and the change is going to be 0.5 is because if the recipient needed only 0.5, my wallet's not going to pull 3 addresses here. It just doesn't need that much. 1 Bitcoin would have been enough to cover the 0.5 in the fee. 2 would have been enough. 1.5 would have been enough. Now, for my wallet to have to pull all 3 of these, I know that it's sending 3.5 to the recipient here. Then what's going to be left over, it is the 0.5. It's 3, 4.5. So you get that's what's left over minus the fee. So the 0.5 is coming back. If anyone has any questions on that while I'm going over it, feel free to throw the question out. Maybe Robert can answer it quick.
Yeah, I'm answering as I go. So quite a few questions.
Okay. Do you want to answer them or ask them, or did wait till the end?
I'm actually typing in answers as we go. So
okay, perfect. I only have a few more slides on clustering anyways, and then we can talk about it. So another way we can identify clusters with Bitcoin addresses specifically. If you remember, Bitcoin addresses will always begin with a 1, a 3, or a BC1. It's different technology for each one. Some wallets can use multiple different types of Bitcoin addresses, but they tend to stick with the same one. So in this example here, we have a Bitcoin address beginning with 1. It's the input. There's only one input. The outputs are a Bitcoin address that begins with 3 and a Bitcoin address that begins with 1. All right, well, which one do we think is going to be the change coming back? It's going to be this bottom one that begins with a 1. Remember, like I mentioned, wallets tend to use the same type of address. So we've got ours matched up, and the 3 it is not going to be a change. It's going to be where the funds were actually being sent to the recipient. Another example, and we're not really going to get much into multi-sig or multi-signature wallets. I just want you to know that they exist. There are certain types of wallets that require multiple private keys to sign or approve a transaction. So in this case, we can see the sending address starts with a 3, and both outputs are a 3. Well, how do we then figure out which is the recipient and which is the change? So a lot of these tools, Merkle Science does, even a lot of the free open source tools will tell you if any of the addresses is a multi-signature, part of a multi-signature wallet. So an example of why or how the multi-signature wallet works is, let's say Robert and we work together, whether it's legitimate or illegal, and I don't want him sending funds without my approval. He doesn't want me sending funds without his approval. So every transaction that one of us makes, we both need to approve it. That's what this is referring to with the multi-signature. It needs at least 2 of 3 signatures to approve it. So if we know if the sending address here is part of a multi-signature wallet, and this one up here is not part of a multi-signature wallet, but this one is, well, if this one's multi-signature and mine is multi-signature, it's the same wallet. This is going to be the change coming back. This one is not, it can't be part of my wallet. Like I said, don't get too worried about that because most of the tools are going to tell you if it's a multi-signature wallet. I just want you to understand what that is. A couple other key factors. So I could spend all day showing you dozens and dozens of examples to really understand this. Unfortunately, we just don't have the time to do that. But a few other tips, if you're going to start looking at these and you want to try to identify the change address versus the recipient, the change or the UTXO is often a smaller amount than the recipient. Not guaranteed, but that's often the case. Remember the one example where I said the wallet will tend to pick just enough cryptocurrency or enough Bitcoin to pay the recipient plus the fee. So the change is normally going to be less than the recipient. Another very important factor that you can use is when we as humans, we like nice, clean, well-rounded numbers. So out of these 2 amounts right here, people are going to tend to send Bitcoin in amounts similar to the bottom one, the 0.150000, and so on Bitcoin, versus I'm not going to sit at my computer and say, hey, I want to send Bitcoin to Robert. I'm going to send him 0.012342216 Bitcoin. It's just not normal. Again, none of this is absolutely set in stone, but if you follow these guidelines, you're going to be pretty set. So with these numbers right here, typically recipient would be the one receiving the 0.15. And since the change is just going to be whatever is left over, that's going to be a really long odd number like this. Now, the easier one, let's move on to the account-based model. I only have a couple slides on this. I think you guys will like this one better. So this would be consistent with Ethereum. So this tracks the overall account balance on the blockchain. It doesn't have change addresses and multiple addresses within the same wallet. It functions exactly like a bank account. If I wanted to send Robert Ether on the Ethereum blockchain from my wallet to his, it would literally send, let's say I have 1 Ether in my wallet, but I wanted to send him 0.5. It will only pull out 0.5 plus enough to cover the fee. There's no change. There's nothing that needs to come back. It's one address to one address. So here's an example of that. If on the left here, there's 0.52 ETH or Ether in this wallet, and you want to make a purchase for 0.4 ETH on the right side, it's only going to pull out 0.4 ETH plus the 0.015 ETH for the fee. That's it. We don't have to worry about change and UTXOs and new addresses being added to a wallet. So I'm guessing you guys probably like this a little bit more. So here's a couple examples of what it would look like. On the top portion of the screen, Merkle Science Tracker shows the sending address on the left side and the amount and the date it's being sent to the address on the right. So in the example I gave you, mine would be on the left and I send it to Robert's address on the right. On the bottom, I think that might be from the free open source tool Blockchair. Could be wrong on that, but I think it's blockchair.com. Still very simple to follow. Shows you the sending address, the recipient address, and the amount that was sent. So just to kind of sum this up a little bit, if you understand these two models, you're going to be very well set because a lot of them are going to fall under these two. There are some variations out there, but if you understand these, you will be pretty good. So with the UTXO, quick summary, it provides, in the transaction, it will provide enough UTXO or funds to meet or exceed the payment amount plus the transaction fee. Paying using, normally, going to pay using whole UTXOs. That's how people normally function. And then the return is going to look like an odd number. You cannot send partial payments. It's always the full amount from a particular address in that wallet that is going to be sent. And with the account-based, I won't even go over these. Like I said, it's just super simple, one address to one address. There's no change involved. It's going to send what was needed for the recipient plus the fee. Decentralized finance, I just want you to understand that this exists and what it is. We're not going to get into depth on this. There's so many different services and functions out there. I'll read the definition to you here, and we'll talk about it briefly. Decentralized finance, or DeFi, is an emerging peer-to-peer system attempting to remove third parties, centralized institutions from financial transactions. DeFi consists of cryptocurrencies, blockchain technology, software that allows people to transact financially with each other. It basically is taking out needing exchanges to, like Coinbase, for example, to buy and sell cryptocurrency, to swap tokens, from one crypto to another. So yeah, similar to a centralized exchange, like I just said, but it kind of puts the power into the user's hand. With these decentralized finance or decentralized exchanges, which are a big part of the DeFi, there's really little to no records. Somebody created this service, we'll call it, or smart contract, which I'm about to explain to you, which complete these functions, but there's little to no records that you can request from them. So within DeFi, there are a few major components. I'm just going to cover these three. Token swapping, major function for the DeFi component, or the DeFi space, refers to the process of directly exchanging a cryptocurrency token to another token without the involvement of needing that crypto to fiat through the centralized exchange, such as Binance or Coinbase. Individuals choose to swap their coins or tokens to save time, pay lower fees, because you're not going through these outside. You don't have to go from crypto to fiat, back to crypto, and go through this other service. A bridge is similar to a token swap, except it's going from one blockchain to another blockchain. If you ever hear the term cross-chain swap, it's the same thing, chain hopping. It's going from one blockchain to another. Very common is going from, well, yeah, I guess you can go from Bitcoin through different swapping services to Ethereum to Tron. But ultimately, like Robert and I have said, we oftentimes see these scams ending up with a stable coin such as Tether on the Tron or sometimes Ethereum blockchain. Smart contract, don't get too confused on this. You don't need to know how to create a smart contract. Just kind of know what its function is. So it's a self-executing contract with the terms of the agreement between the buyer and seller. Essentially, it's just code that anyone can build onto the blockchain. Ethereum, very popular blockchain for people to build smart contracts on. And these smart contracts are what essentially are doing the token swaps and the bridge, the chain hopping. So I think a good explanation to that is kind of like a vending machine. Somebody created this vending machine, right? They put it in the lobby or wherever you're going to this vending machine, and it's just one person, it's just me. I know that if I put, $2 in there and I push this button, I'm going to get a Snickers bar out of it, or I'm going to get a Coca-Cola out of it. That's essentially what a smart contract does. This third party built this smart contract. It's just code. They put it on the blockchain. And I know that if I send, 100 Tether to it, I can swap that to whatever type of cryptocurrency. So that's what a smart contract is. Again, I don't know how to create smart contract and do all the coding. Just know that that's what smart contracts do. They're kind of king in the DeFi space because they allow all these functions, the token swaps, for example, to occur without needing a third party to do it for you. And just a couple examples of what it would look like. So I had mentioned with Bitcoin, the free open source tools. If you're looking at the Ethereum blockchain, Etherscan is by far the most popular website to go to trace and follow funds on the Ethereum blockchain. Again, it's a free website. So if I'm transferring 103, you can see this in the middle here. It says transaction type, date, time, transaction hash. So very similar to Bitcoin. It's going to have a lot of that same information, but it's simply telling me, what that transaction was. I transferred 103 USDT, which is Tether, to this address, 3A6. Down here, I sent it from this address, and I interacted with a smart contract. The reason a smart contract was involved is, remember, Tether is a token, doesn't really belong on the Ethereum blockchain, so smart contracts, they help these tokens move on the blockchain. And this is what it looks like graphed out on Merkle Science Tracker. Sent from this address, 103 USDT. Give me the date to this address here, and interacted with a smart contract. This, of course, is a very simple smart contract transaction. They can get a lot more complicated, but this at least kind of shows you what they do. Stablecoins, won't spend too much more time on these. It's a subset of cryptocurrency. A lot of them are centralized, unlike what cryptocurrency was created for. It's because a third party, like Robert mentioned, Tether, is the developer, the creator of the USDT. Circle is the creator of USDC. And stablecoins hold their value. Most of them are pegged to the US dollar, but it can be pegged to other fiat currency as well. And the reason it holds a stable value is it's backed by an actual asset. That could be backed by actual cash, it could be backed by other commodities or cryptocurrencies, but the value is there. And that's what keeps the value from fluctuating. If anybody ever tells you that they are moving hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars worth of stable coin because they're an investor, it's probably not true. The only time an investor would hold stable coin is maybe they think the value of something else is going to drop or increase or something, so they want it out very briefly, but nobody puts money into a stable coin as an investment. NFTs, we'll touch on very briefly. There's convertible or fungible and non-fungible tokens with cryptocurrency. Most cryptocurrency is going to be the convertible or fungible, like Bitcoin, for example. Bitcoin I have is going to be exactly the same as a Bitcoin that Robert has. That's essentially what that means. Most non-fungible is going to be referring to NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which is authenticated digital art in most cases. With the NFTs, one token is unique. It has an identifier. Nobody can replicate that. So if any of you have heard of NFTs and digital art, I fully don't understand the appeal to it. I know what they are. I can trace them. So these NFTs function on various blockchains. The Ethereum blockchain is a popular blockchain that NFTs can function on. Some people use them in, like, for a while, drug traffickers were using them quite a bit. I don't see it quite as often, but let's say a drug dealer was selling $100,000 worth of heroin to a buyer. They would, in addition to the drug passing along to the buyer, they would also essentially buy or sell an NFT. That way, if anybody ever asked, hey, what did you give the drug dealer $100,000 for? Well, I bought an NFT. Some people used NFTs to commit tax fraud. You can essentially buy it for a lot, sell it to yourself for a very little, and write that off as a tax loss. NFTs real popular with like athletes, different types of celebrities, musicians promoting them. OpenSea is one of the more popular websites for NFTs, where you can buy and sell them. Well, one thing I find real interesting, or that's helpful with OpenSea, if you come across an Ethereum address and you don't know who it belongs to, you can actually copy and paste that Ethereum address in here, do a search, and if that person is or did previously buy or sell an NFT, it won't tell you their actual name, but it will show what they bought or sold. And it will show the seller's moniker or nickname. And that could, if you do some open source intelligence on that, you might be able to figure some things out. Just a few examples of some ridiculous NFTs. I mean, this one on the top left sold for $91 million. The one on the top right is just, thousands of small images put together. Someone paid $69 million for it. So this is what NFTs are. Just know that you can trace them on the blockchain. This kind of shows you the flow of funds. The buyer would send payment into the OpenSea contract. OpenSea gives some of the funds to the seller. OpenSea keeps some as a commission, and then the NFT, which is a token on the blockchain, gets sent to the buyer. This is absolutely not all of them, but this is just a handful of some of the more common free cryptocurrency tracing tools or different tools out there, open source tools that you might want to access. The first three are good for Bitcoin for sure. Blockchain will do other blockchains as well. Lastchain.org, I find is pretty good for, it's called attribution. Remember Robert and I talked about identifying an exchange that an address belongs to, if it's Binance, Coinbase, because you can maybe freeze funds, seize funds, get the know your customer information. You can put an address in glasschain.org, and there are others out there also. And it can sometimes tell you if that address belongs to an exchange that you can then follow up with. It's never going to be as good as having a tracing tool like Merkle Science, but it can work. Tracing goals, talked about this. Ideally, we're trying to trace to exchanges so we can get the records, freeze the funds, get attribution, figure out what exchange it actually belongs to. So the difference between the exchange address and an unhosted private address is the exchange we can get those records from as long as it's a cooperative exchange. A private unhosted address, which would be a wallet you just created, like a cold storage wallet or a software wallet you installed on your phone. Those we're probably not going to be able to get any kind of identifiers, but we can trace through those. If you're sending funds out of one of those wallets or you're receiving it, we can see it all. Domestic exchanges, at least I'm speaking for US here. We can get records from any domestic exchange. They tend to want a subpoena, warrant, some kind of court order. Overseas exchanges, not all of them are cooperative, but many are. And the ones that are cooperative, it's normally just a formal request on law enforcement agency letterhead, and they'll provide us the records. Some of them will even let us freeze and seize cryptocurrency in overseas accounts. A mutual legal assistance treaty, that's when it's an uncooperative exchange, for example, and we need to go through the formal route through the Department of Justice in DC, and that goes to their equivalent overseas. That can take anywhere from weeks to months to years. So you can kind of see how that's problematic with cryptocurrency. I'm not gonna get in depth on crypto or seizing cryptocurrency here, but if you are law enforcement, please talk to your prosecutors before you start trying to seize and freeze cryptocurrency. Some prosecutors don't even know they can do it. Some local districts may not think they have the authority to do it. Yeah, there's so many considerations. So until you're comfortable with how your prosecutor wants it, please get on the same page with them. If you're going to freeze cryptocurrency, please follow up with the exchange afterwards. Like, they freeze it with the intent that you're going to follow up to seize it. So if that changes, please contact them so they can unfreeze it. Otherwise, it's going to create bad precedent and the exchanges will stop cooperating with us. So I just have a few case examples here to show you some of the cases that we can work with these blockchain analytics, and then we'll pass you on over to Robert. So this particular scam came in about a year ago. A victim was convinced to pull cash out from their bank account and send it through a Bitcoin ATM or kiosk, specifically CoinHub. So this is another one where they received a text message and it only gave us a partial address. Using Merkle Science Tracker, I was able to identify the entire address, and from there we were able to do the tracing. So this is, with just that, this is what I was able to come up with. So this top address here is the CoinHub ATM. And the funds were sent by the victim to this suspect address right here. That's all we had. I was able to look at other funds coming into the same suspect address, and I saw funds coming in from Bitcoin Depot. I looked at the approximate, is the date? No, the date's not on here. But I looked at the date. It was almost the same date that this same address is receiving funds from other victims at ATMs. The amount that was sent was comparable. So it's fair to say, and we could always try to identify the Bitcoin Depot victim, but it would be fairer for me to say that this is going to be another victim sending funds to the same address. On top of that, I traced my victim's funds out and it went directly to a Binance address. I traced the Bitcoin Depot suspected stolen funds out, went straight to the same Binance address. In my experience, that is 99.9% chance all of that's going to be stolen funds. So I was able at that point, the question's going to be, do we just request records from Binance because they will comply and they're actually quite fast with providing that? Do we want to immediately ask Binance to freeze the account? My opinion, it really just depends, how old of a case this is, how long ago did the victim's funds get deposited. If it's within the last 2-3 days, I'm probably going to just try to freeze it. If we're talking weeks, I may not want to take that action right away. Just get the record, see what the balance is. Binance can also show me where the funds went after they left Binance. A couple other things that I was able to learn using Merkle Science Tracker. This is specific to this Binance address. It was able to show me that that address had received over $165,000 worth of Bitcoin from crypto ATMs. And then also $24,000 from US domestic exchanges, such as Coinbase or Kraken. So it's fair to assume that probably all of that is all going to be stolen funds. And that's going to be a good Binance address for us to target. Here was a case I helped out with an agency from another state. This was one, first half of it started with bank fraud, and then the funds got dumped into the blockchain. I think it might have gone straight into the Tron. We'll see in a second. But essentially, the victim thought they were buying a house. They paid with $200,000 to a bank account. The local investigator did the initial work, saw that the $200,000 went to Kraken and Binance. And then from there, he was able to give me these two addresses where the funds were transferred. So this is what the graph looks like in using Merkle Science Tracker. Funds left Binance. I see over 94,000 USDT. So remember, 1 USDT is about $1 US. So 94,000 to this address here, 93,000 to this address here. But then this 94,000 comes right back and, gets combined again. To me, in my experience, that's a method of money laundering. They're trying to obfuscate or hide the flow of funds. If the user wants all the money in this address here, why separate it just to have it come back together? They're trying to hide that, make it difficult for us to follow. And then from here, it just keeps, there's no reason anybody would keep hopping from address to address to address when they're all private unhosted addresses. So at this point, I got involved in the investigation when the just under $200,000 was in this last address here. My advice to the local investigator was, being that it's a stable coin, we can reach out to Tether, the creator or developer of the USDT. They can blocklist, which means essentially they are going to make all of the USDT in that address no longer active. It can't be transferred out. There's no longer any value to it. Tether can then reissue, like let's say it was exactly 200,000 USDT that gets blacklisted, main inactive. Tether will then reissue 200,000 new USDT and transfer that to our law enforcement wallet. We can then get that back to the victim. So that's one way that we can do blocklisting. Another term is blacklisting, means exactly the same thing. But that's one thing we can do as stablecoin in private unhosted wallets that are not part of an exchange. So I think I got 2 more examples. So in this one, it's another ATM case. Victim lost $15,000. They thought they were talking to their bank. It was not really their bank. Told to take the 15 grand, send it through a Bitcoin ATM. They ended up receiving like pop-up alerts, virus alerts, and things like that on their computer, and that's kind of how it started. So they ended up sending the $15,000. They bought Bitcoin, sent it to this address here. So from CoinHub ATM, this is going to be the suspect address. And let's see, yeah, this suspect address had received a lot of deposits from crypto ATMs, and it was still holding the victim's funds. So this one was interesting and worked out for us. So we saw a pattern of funds leaving this address and going to Changelly, which is a swapping service. So they will essentially take Bitcoin, and what it probably would have been swapped to was Tether USDT on the Tron blockchain, is most likely what they were doing. But I had seen 3 transactions going out, and they all went to Changelly. I reached out to Changelly, and I said, hey, this address here is holding stolen money, stolen Bitcoin. I would like you to blacklist or blocklist it. What that means is they will watch it, and if any funds go from there to Changelly, they will automatically grab it, contact me, and then I can get a seizure warrant to them. Otherwise, Changelly doesn't have your typical custodial wallets. They just swap the funds and they get sent out right away. So if you don't reach out to them and ask them to blacklist or blocklist, Changelly is just one example. There are a lot of services that'll do that. So that ended up happening about a week after we blacklisted that address. Changelly contacted us and said they were able to grab the funds. We got them a seizure warrant. We got the funds back to the victim. Last case example here. So in this one, a local victim in the Milwaukee area, he thought he was involved in a legitimate cryptocurrency investment company, and he ended up sending about $551,000 worth of USDC, which is a stable coin with Circle. Robert mentioned is a US company. He ended up, it probably easier, I just show you the graph on this one. So on the left here, this is the victim's Coinbase wallet. He sent 15 transactions out to this address here. So that's the initial suspect or target address. From there, I was able to trace all of the funds. But remember, different money laundering techniques. What is that? 1, 2, 3, maybe about 7 amounts going out to this one, 1 to this one, 2 to this one. These 2 get combined into 1. These 7 get combined into 3. There's no legitimate reason anyone is doing this. This is straight up money laundering. And then on top of that, some of the victims' funds were swapped from, USDC to USDT. So there were a lot of money laundering techniques going on. We identified dozens of other victims. This transnational scamming group responsible for at least tens of millions of dollars. We were able to show all of our victims' funds were still in this wallet right here, this address. It held at the time about it says right here, 812,000 USDC. We were able to seize it all, even though the victim only lost about 551,000, because we had gone back and identified all these other victims, showed that this wallet's being used for money laundering purposes, and at least according to the federal laws in our district, we were able to seize all of it. In addition to that, I don't have this graphed out, but we continued watching additional funds. They had another like $4 million sitting in here. And we ended up monitoring that. And just very recently, we were able to blacklist another almost $500,000 in USDT. So we're working on that seizure warrant right now. That is my case examples. I know that's a lot, probably especially the clustering and the change address, that sort of thing. If you're familiar with cryptocurrency already, you might understand that a bit. But for those of you who who are not. I understand that can be a lot in a couple hours shot there. So any questions, Robert, that we should talk about real quick?
No, I'm actually answering a question. Why don't you do this live on here? It says, can you blacklist funds in a wallet? So if they go via a few hops to Changely and not directly to a Changely wallet, the transaction will be blocked nonetheless. So my response to that is no. But there is a workaround. So you can't essentially go onto the blockchain and blacklist an address. What you have to do is you have the cooperation of a third party, and that third party has to know that this user will blacklisted. So in the case that Scott was saying, that the Circle was the creator and the launcher of the USDC token, so they were able to go in and say, look, these tokens are essentially ours. They're no longer valid. We'll burn them later, and here's your cash back, or something like that. Is that correct, Scott? Kind of how that works?
Yes. Yep, you're absolutely spot on.
Right.
And yeah, with that Changelly case example, had the victim funds gone to another private unhosted wallet, unfortunately, I would then need to blacklist that address with Changelly as well. Luckily, I saw that pattern that they were going directly to Changelly. But yes, with the stablecoin, they can go into that particular unhosted wallet. The way I blacklisted or blacklisted the Bitcoin with Changelly. Yeah, unfortunately, that's done a little bit differently.
Yeah. So Raymond here says, I've never heard of moving one BTC and getting the balance back. How do you move less than one BTC between wallets when you don't have one BTC? Well, so the way Bitcoin works is you don't need one BTC. Bitcoins can be broken down into 1/100th of a millionth of a part of a Bitcoin. So take a Bitcoin, you can break that down to, no, it's 100 millions. It's 100 million parts you can break it down into. So think about it. That's called a Satoshi. I can send one Satoshi if I wanted to. I don't think the fee will actually let you do that these days because it's not much for a fee. But you can send very minute amounts of Bitcoin anywhere you want. And you don't have to have one. In fact, you can invest in a small fraction of Bitcoin if you wanted to, put it in your wallet. And when we talk about Bitcoin itself, think about if it's a payment system and you wanted to send $5 in Bitcoin, that would be a very, very small amount of Bitcoin right now. So that's the answer to that. Go ahead, Scott.
No,
Okay.
you're spot on with that. Yeah, if one Bitcoin was the smallest you could send, I mean, one Bitcoin's worth $100,000. So yeah, like Robert said, it can be broken down very small.
Yeah. So this is what we do, ladies and gentlemen. We will take 5 minutes, 5 minutes only, because we have another portion where we're going to do some live work. I'm not one to like be scripted, so I'm just going to open Merkle some of my cases I'm working on that I've changed the name so we don't release any private information. No names attached, and we'll go through some stuff that might make your searching better and your transactions better and your work better. Some of the mistakes that I've seen and actually made in life. I mean, in the crypto world. So let's take 5 minutes, no more than that, and we'll get back in. That'll take us right up to a half hour, and then we'll go. All right, see you in 5 minutes. All right, everybody. I'm going to take over the screen now, and we're going to kind of walk through some actual cases that I've worked on, and make sure I got the right screen here. Okay, looks like it, and we'll share that there. Scott, let me know if you can see that.
Yes, I can see it. And I understand most of you might not be able to send messages in the actual chat. Hopefully you can at least view it. I put my email address in there. If you guys can't see that, maybe just send a question and I will share it differently. But yes, Robert, I can see your screen.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so Scott talked a lot about different investigations that are out there. He did a really good job covering crypto in general and how we look at it and how things are accomplished. And he did a really good job covering Bitcoin. So right now at this first part, I'm gonna look at Bitcoin, and so I'm gonna ask you to keep your attention to this top section right here. Okay. Erase that line because we don't need it now. But anyway, make my little cursor bigger too. A little something bigger. Yeah, there we go. So now when we look at, I need to kind of look at this. we looked at Bitcoin. This is an actual investigation that I've done for a police department, which will be unnamed. See, I didn't name it up there, so you'll protect the victim and the case. But anyway, so what had happened was the victim here was enticed into sending from their Coinbase account a quantity of Bitcoin, so about 0.759. This was done not quite a month ago, just over a month ago, on December 22nd. So you can see it's relatively not that long ago, and Bitcoin was over 100,000 then, I believe. So we're looking at about 75 grand plus that the victim sent out. So now the first thing to do is to make sure you get your time and your dates correct. That is probably the most important thing that you can do, is make sure your time and your dates are correct as you move forward. What you'll find happening in a lot of tools, including ours, just because of the nature of what we're doing here, when you get connections between addresses, some of those connections may be older or outside your time range. So that's probably one of the biggest mistakes I see investigators make, is they get kind of down a rabbit hole, and they're going down something that is not within their timelines, right? It happened before the victim even reported or even happened. So just keep that in mind as you move forward. You can see as we're moving forward here, we see the 7.9 out of Coinbase. You can see Coinbase actually sent quite a bit more because this is Coinbase's. Can you see my cursor, Scott, as it moves?
Yes, I can see
Okay.
it.
All right, perfect. I don't want to turn the annotations in because it gets hard because I got to erase them. But anyway, you can see here, and then I knew from the context of the theft that we were looking for about 0.65 Bitcoin. So we have one input and we have several output addresses. So what I have to do is I have to go through and look for the right output address. I can't follow one of these that says Bybit on the side of it, because that's the wrong output that I'm looking for. So I just narrowed it down to what I was looking for, and I selected that one, and then I move forward to the next address. So I'm staying within my time ranges, and I'm staying within my value. Now the value might change as we move forward because of fees going out, or splitting the transaction, or the amounts to another address, or it might actually grow in value because they commingle other victims' funds into it. So keep all these things in mind. There's some hard and fast rules with crypto, and there's also some not hard and fast rules that you just kind of get the art of how this is done as you move forward. So as you can see, we move forward. The next address, I'm going to look at the outbound transaction. This is the inside 60.65. I looked at this address here. I know there's transactions available. There's at least one, because it says up here at top. You see it says one deposit, one withdrawal, and it tells me the date and time. All right, so it's within my dates and times. It's relatively simple because there's one input and one output. All right, so that I can follow it forward. Here goes right here. So I see this 0.65 going out, and this is it. And if we want to look a little deeper at this transaction, we can drop these boxes down, open them up, and we can see the inputs on the left, the outputs on the right. Same thing. And so we're moving forward. Now, what happens here is we get a commingling of funds, right? So this suspect in this case actually commingled some funds in here. See, we have two inputs and one output. So we'd actually have an increase in value, but we see our funds are in here. They're right here. This is what we're looking for. So we see that part, but we also see, because we know that inputs belong to the same person, we know this person controls his wallet, and we know that person's our scammer right now. So they added more to it. Now, if we were to trace in the other direction, we'd probably identify more victims here. But we're doing the same thing as we did before. We're going to trace forward. So now we see this address coming up. And as we look here, now we see a lot of additional deposits and withdrawals here. So you see on top, you see deposits 117, withdrawals 146. We see that there is a lot of stuff going on here. We can look at the transactions here. We got a lot of them, quite a bit, right? So we need to figure out what is ours. Once again, we know our date range is, it cannot be before the 23rd of December. So we can discount all these other transactions out before that. So keeping your date range is correct. And then what I did, I'll make this kind of short and sweet, but I went ahead and and I selected the transaction for us, and this is it right here. And you can see the funds here, quite a bit of funds because they're obviously commingled again. But we're moving forward, and essentially I like to use a last in first out accounting method, because that gives me the after my crypto enters a wallet, the next transaction going out, I'm assuming that that's the value of mine plus whatever needs to be added to it if there's additional transactions. That's the way I do it. Scott, is there any agencies that have real hard policy on this yet? I mean, I've heard some government agencies talking about it, but I don't know if there's a hard policy on that just yet.
Um, I feel like I know a lot in Secret Service use LIFO, last in, first out. Not always. Honestly, I think it really just depends on the district, and how you can articulate it.
Yeah, I think you're right. So it's a good idea to get with those that are doing investigations with you, or maybe a district attorney or the U.S. attorney or whatever your jurisdiction is, and come to some kind of agreement on. And I think it shouldn't be really hard and fast. It should be case by case. Like, hey, I couldn't really figure it this way, but I used this accounting method. It worked out pretty good. And discuss the returns and see how you like it. So I like to use last in first out. It seems to work for me pretty well. So. I just keep following forward. So in this particular transaction, I have commingled funds that came in again. So I use them. I see my outputs over here on the right side. I'm going to trace them forward. I'm going to stick with the one BTC, which is the top line here. It's the higher value in this case, and it goes into this address here. Now, when you see an address with a circle around it, like this one right here, not these type over here, but this one right here is this larger circle around it. That means there's actually clustered wallets that go with it. And if you click on the outside of that, you'll see the cluster. In this case, there's cluster size of 5 addresses. Now, what this means is that means that somewhere along the line, our system, or through heuristics and other algorithms, have said, look, there's 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 additional addresses that belong in the same or have the same ownership as this address. Now, if you look, you see all the received. It looks like the address we're looking at has received about 74, just over 74 Bitcoin, and sent 74 Bitcoin over time. But the other addresses related to it have only done small amounts, like 3 here, minute amounts here. So, as Scott said earlier, this is a really good indicator that if there's been transferred before, and these are probably change wallets from other transfers they've done out of this address if we trace in other directions. But this might also indicate that there's other victims out there as well, and these became co-inputs to transactions along the line for this address. So things to remember, but this is how you develop more intel moving forward along the line. So
Hey,
we're back to
hey,
this address.
Robert,
Yeah,
real
go ahead.
quick. There's one question, and I just don't know the ins and outs of that transaction to answer. So we have one question. It says, why does it show the transfer of 0.65 and not the full 0.75?
Let me see where it's at here. Back here, back here.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think I have to see where they're actually talking about 0.65, not the point. Oh, right here, right? Yeah,
Must be right there.
0.75. Yeah. So what I did is I followed my actual output forward. So this is an input 0.75, right? And then I have a bunch of output addresses that have received funds, and this is the Coinbase hot wallet transfer. So Coinbase sent funds to a lot of different people. Remember, on the output side, those are different individuals that aren't related to each other generally, right? On the co-input side, those are people that is one person or one party controlling all the input addresses. The output side is not, the input side is. So I was able to select what I knew from the case context as being my victim's transfer, which is 0.65, this one right here. So I know my victim lost 0.65 because that's what was reported. So I just selected that one address, that one output, and not the rest of them as well. That's why there's a difference in amounts. Does that make sense? Well, I can't really hear you, but yes, hopefully that makes sense. Moving back to where we were, we're at this address here. So what I have here is I have a commingled funds again. So it's been gaining value as we see. And the reason why I can't do what I did with my first transaction is there's no single output that belongs, that's exactly the amount. The outputs are getting bigger, and I'm sticking with what I believe is my victims' funds moving forward. Okay. Now you can see there's a small output of Bitcoin here to this address here within the correct timelines. And the funds are still there, as a matter of fact. So I'll click on it, and the funds are still being held here and I can see that because there's one deposit, no withdrawals. It's a small amount. Well, about 0.13. Let's take a look at what that means in dollar value. That's 13 grand, right? Almost $14,000. So it's a small amount in Bitcoin, but it's a large amount in dollars. So there's still 13 grand of the victim's funds, or what might be recoverable one day, in this address here, which is a good use of what we call the watch feature. You can click on watch up here. You can put this address in and have it email you. So if these funds ever move, you can stay with them as they move through the blockchain. Maybe one day that'll end up at Binance or Coinbase or something, and you can send them process. But the watch feature on addresses that balance is good to kind of trace it as it goes along. And it could take a while. I've seen addresses that hold value for years, and then you get up one morning, you get an alert, and it says, "Hey, that money you've been watching for 3.5 years just moved." That's how people do not get away using crypto. They get caught essentially. That's how that happens. So back to my example. So we have the address. We have the transaction from here to this address here. This is the transaction ID in the middle. You can see the values have vastly grown now. And if we click on the transaction link here in the middle, you can see there's a lot of money here that went in. Let's just take a look at this address here real quick so we see where it came from. It came from 21 deposits, 21 different deposits. There's a balance on this address too right now. So there's more funds that could potentially be seizable in the future by watching this move forward, right? Because we think they're going to go to Binance, right? And I'm sure when I wrote the detective back on this case, I probably said something like, you got to call Binance and talk to them about this address because those funds might flow right to Binance because that's historically how it's been ending up to begin with. You can see how that flow goes. So this is one of those cases where I would say there's a good chance of seizure because it's Binance, because funds are existing, and we see that path going, and we see that path growing, right? And if we're going to say that this is all a scammer's, path here, then all this funds should be seizable as we go down the line. So this is a really good case example on how you might be able to make a difference, but it's also an example on how you need to use all the features available to you and really understand Bitcoin and Bitcoin tracing. So now that is Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is what I would call the easiest of all chains to trace that is in use today. It's easy if you understand it, and so I would encourage each person on this call to continue to learn about Bitcoin and how this works, right down to the minute details of how Bitcoin works, including Bitcoin mining. Because once you understand that, you can trace through it pretty easily. Now, if we move up here a little bit, or down here, excuse me, to this second graph, which is this area right here, this is a little more difficult. And Scott, jump in to help me if I'm missing something. But this is a transfer of Ethereum. We'll start with here. This is our victim's Coinbase address. It came out of Coinbase and went to these two addresses here, the two scammer addresses. Now, if you notice, let me turn this back off here. The amounts went in USDC, right? And that is because Coinbase doesn't, well, they do. Does Coinbase have Tether? Yeah. Not on Tron, though. They don't do Tron. Anyway, USDC, it came out. And what I don't show here is the contract calls. Now, as Scott showed you earlier, there for each one of these lines going out says USDC. There's a third intermediary address up here that would say USDC contract, and there would be a call to that, and then movement of the funds. I typically I delete those off the graph because it's not because they're not important. It's just that the graph hygiene gets really messy, and you start seeing all these contracts on there. I like to see just the transfers, but you gotta do what you feel best with, and just realize that when you have contract calls, you're going to have a third, maybe even four or five different icons here that would say like USDC or Tether or whatever it takes, or maybe even bridge protocols. So as we trace this forward, we can see the funds each time. Now, I also keep an eye on my dates and times, like I said before. See the dates and times over here. These are aggregated, but you can see the loss here is December 22nd, the 19th. So I think it was prior to the 19th up to about the 23rd. As you can see, the loss. And it actually goes back quite farther because I have them all done all the way back to the 3rd of December and forward. The victim was sending funds to the scammers because they were getting scammed in an investment scam, and they kept putting money in and hopefully getting money out, as Scott explained, into his website, where this money was not going to a website. This money was flowing through USDC through conversions, right? And it kept on going until we did what? What happened here? Oh, we have a swap to USDT. There it is right there, ladies and gentlemen. USDT, it's swapped over on the Ethereum chain, and you see the contract call right here, right? It's just one of them. But you see the contract call, you see the swap into USDT, and then, of course, it gets laundered right out into hit BTC. And then this one is a little more. If you have questions, please ask them. We'll get to them in a second. You can see the funds flowing, and you can see the little bit of difference between what I'm doing as well as from Bitcoin to here, because even though I'm interested in the transactions and how it got there, I'm not so interested in putting that transaction on the screen where I can open up and see the inputs and outputs. It's just one solid line, right? Moving forward. And this is interesting right here because even though we got USDC to USDT, we get to this portion right here, and what happens? This is a bridge transfer where they transferred the USDT from Ethereum to Tron, and then they wash it out at Binance. Now, that is in line with what Scott and I have been saying almost the entire time we've been talking today. The USDT on Tron is really the path of choice, and right to Binance. So in this case right here, I talked to the detective, and hopefully they sent some kind of process over to Binance to talk about these addresses. And I don't know, they may have even got something frozen. I don't know. That's the thing when you're not in law enforcement no more. You don't always get the facts at the end, right? You get the request for help, but you don't always find out what happened at the end. But anyway, hopefully this was helpful to them. And you can see how different chains. Bitcoin, you'll never see this. You'll never see the hopping around like that. You might see like a bridge transfer from Bitcoin to Ethereum, and then you'll get into the Ethereum type tracing or EVM type tracing. But when it stays Bitcoin, it's pretty simple. It's just straightforward. It's following the money, hop to hop to hop, and down to the line to where it cashes out. Sometimes it could be hundreds, maybe 1,000 hops. But Ethereum becomes a little more complicated. You got contract calls, you got bridge swaps, you got all kinds of things going on, and different types of protocols and different types of tokens, different type of coins. You don't have to be proficient in all these things. Like we said, this is not a course where we make you an expert. This is a course where we get you, we get you up to speed on crypto, but you have a lot to learn still as you go forward. So let's take some questions. We have questions? All right, no
Yeah,
questions.
I answered a couple, and I was about to type one out right now. I guess we'll start with this one, which is specific to your graph. So the question is, did you also have law enforcement subpoena any information related to the transactions sent from the QLH8C to the entities like Cash App?
Well, I'll have to find that particular transaction. Is that on the graph? Is that what we're talking about?
I believe he's referring to something on the graph. So I guess so whether Robert did or did not subpoena that, I guess the answer is he absolutely could have law enforcement subpoena that. Cash App is cooperative. So at least US law enforcement can definitely get a subpoena to Cash App. I mean, I'm not looking at the specific transaction that you're referring to, but yes, if funds went to Cash App, we can definitely get those records to show who received it.
Right, and since I'm not law enforcement, retired, so it doesn't make me law enforcement anymore. But I do when I give returns back to law enforcement, in sense of doing the investigation like this, I will give them a target list. I will say, these are the targets that I would subpoena, and I'd give the transaction and the addresses along the line, and the points of cash out, not and a graph like this showing the funds in a traceable form. So I can't do it myself, obviously, and that's the thing. If somebody comes to you and says, "Oh, I can investigate that and get the money back," the first words out of your mouth should be like, "What agency do you work for?" Because it's just as Scott said before, law enforcement is the only ones that have the power to do that kind of stuff. So you can help, yeah, but you can't. You don't have the power to do that. You're a private company or private citizen. So, but I do when I do make returns back to them, I do always say either there's nothing to find here, or these are the targets. I would target these and ask for this. Yeah.
So next question. This is the one that I started typing here, but I'll let you answer. Um, yeah. Regarding your tracking tools, I noticed that so much of this appears to be manual. Criminals often depend on the lag between the crime and when an investigation is initiated. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And then he goes on to say to be really effective, tracing and tracking should be performed in real time and automatically initiated. What are your thoughts?
Well, I wish we had technology for that, because we can't. We have to wait for the transaction to occur and become confirmed, or at least hit the mempool. And then at that point, that's when we can start seeing it in our tools. So it's almost for Bitcoin and Ethereum, I think we have a lag time of only a few minutes on the block time. So once the block time occurs, it's only a few minutes before we parse it and put it in the tool. Now that's when we usually get a notice through our watch feature. Now the mempool for Bitcoin, the watch feature will tell you it's in a mempool. Ethereum has a fast block time already. It's only a couple minutes, so it'll be there pretty quick. Now we have had success doing cases, or I have had success in following the transaction down the line and seeing where it's going to go because of historical transfers out of the addresses that it's in now or was, and then contacting that exchange and saying, "Hey, this address has transferred X amount of dollars to or funds in the past. They just sent money to a known scammer, just sent money to it. It'll likely go to you. Can you then seize it through the assistance of law enforcement?" So law enforcement being the ones that have to send the process, they affect the scammer's path. They affect where they're going to send it. And what we saw the scammers fishing around, essentially looking for other places to send money to that they've stolen, and we were able to intercept them almost. It wasn't real time. It can't be. There's no way. There's no way you can do it real time. The same way you can't head off crime real time, because you don't know someone's going to rob a bank until they actually go rob the bank, right? Um, so it's almost real time if you're on the ball, and you have the pre-existing information of the case. But this is what we have today. This is where we are. Um, so yeah.
Yeah, so the one thing I'll add is with the tracker tool, for example, the one thing if you can get caught up, I mean, because the bad guys, the scammers, they will move the funds quite a bit, and not all the time, but occasionally they will stop. They think they get to a safe spot. Maybe they, hop onto the Tron blockchain. The tracker tool has like a monitoring alert option to where you can monitor a particular address. It will send you notifications when funds come in and funds go out. So as far as live, that part can be helpful.
Yeah, and we try to get it as close to live as possible. I mean, within the restrictions that the blockchain gives us, that's all we can do.
Yeah. At least for me on some of my cases, that has definitely helped quite a bit.
Hmm. Yep.
Um, all right. Yep. We've got a few more questions. Why is transferring to the Tron using USDT and out via Binance a preferred choice?
Well, Tron it has lesser attribution. Number one, um, it was created by the owner of HTX, which is Woby Joseph's son. And I'm not quite sure. Maybe Scott can answer this. Scott, have you heard of block listing on Tron for USDT?
Yes, it can be done.
Okay, good. So it can be done, yes. But it's still a preferred method. We'll have
Fee
to,
fees are much lower on the Tron network. I know
yeah,
that.
yeah, that could very well be it. But I can't give you the exact reasons. I can just tell you that that is definitely the preferred method right now. There is some swapping over to the DAI stablecoin as block listing becomes more prevalent. Um, and actually Tron is it Tether, TRM? Was it Tron? It
Yeah.
was all three of them. I think they created like a T3 organization, something like that, where they're actually working together to seize funds or something. There's a few organizations out there that are working to put some more hurdles in the way, if you will, of this type of activity. And I think as we go down the line, now this may be future predicting, but I think that as block listing becomes more prevalent on USDT, USDC, regardless of the chain it's on, I think you're going to see moving away because look, the illicit actors out there, they're not going to stop. This is not, they just don't go, well, they got us, we're stopping. We'll never do that again. No, they find other ways to do it. We've seen some stablecoin studies that we've actually produced that show DAI being all of a sudden being better funded, more people doing more transactions over there. So that may be the path of the future. I don't know, but we're on it. We'll keep watching and see where this goes and keep working the cases.
Next question. Have you had a case on the Stellar network?
I have had Stellar network cases. Stellar functions. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing special there. Stellar is a fairly easy blockchain as well. Um, I think the attribution is probably lacking. It's not very popular amongst scammers, that's for sure.
Yeah. Um, what volume of funds would qualify for an investigation?
Well, that depends on the jurisdiction you're in. Doing this on a private side, I'd be honest with you, I typically don't charge victims to do investigations for them. I just feel bad. I hate to take any money from anybody like that. But I've had investigations all the way down to like $5,000, and I tell the victim, I said, look, your losses are really slim. You should be just thankful you only lost 5,000. I mean, that might be all the money they have in the world. But I've had cases where there's millions and millions and millions, tens of millions out there that they've lost. So, and when it comes to law enforcement, the U.S. attorney and the district attorneys will set their thresholds, and it depends on the jurisdiction.
Yeah. And I mean, even if it's a lower one, and I know it's not something a prosecutor is going to take, I at least like doing a little bit of tracing on it to at least give a victim some closure, if that
Yeah,
makes sense. Um, but yeah,
yeah.
like Robert said, definitely depends on each agency in the district. Um, oh, here's an interesting one. I think you maybe were just talking about this a little bit the other day. Does your tool provide IP address insights for Bitcoin addresses?
Yeah, that's a really good one. We have some addresses like that, although truth and disclosure here, we are not actively collecting those today. But that is in our path of what we're doing in the future, and I mean near future. So we'll be working on ways to gather IP addresses when it's available. That's the key. When it's available for a Bitcoin address. Bitcoin addresses transactions do not include IP information, so there is a whole other way that has to be gathered if there's even IP information gatherable on Bitcoin. So just because it's been done doesn't mean it's the norm. It is absolutely not the norm. So just put that out there.
How do you export the data from such a massive chart?
You can use our export feature, which will, when you have the sidebar open, like if I click this address here, when the sidebar opens, you can use this export feature right here. It'll convert what you're seeing, at least on this address, to a CSV. So you can do that, And a lot of times I will export the entire graph out and we do it in SVG format so that it doesn't become pixelated. When you make it larger, it stays nice and clean and crisp. Between the CSV export and the graph export, you should be able to tell a pretty good story.
It's questions keep coming in.
I know. We are
Let's
right at time. I don't want to cut it off, so we're not going to. But just so everyone knows, we're at time. If you want to stick around, listen to the answers. We'll continue answering. But if you don't, feel free to drop off.
Yeah, lot of great questions. All right. So in the case of the Bitcoin trace, I think referring to yours on here right now. Um, we started out looking for 0.65 in Bitcoin, but then it looks like we exit out in a quantity greater than 2 Bitcoin. It's hard to tell because the writing is small. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
smaller print on here. Are
yeah.
you making an assumption that 0.65 is wrapped up in the 2 Bitcoin? If so, are you also assuming that the wallet is shared or that it didn't end up in another wallet, or does it not matter from the perspective of law enforcement? How do we go from the 0.65 to the 2?
Okay, so the 0.65 is where we started. That was our singular victims' funds that were lost. We know from the reporting of the victim that the funds were sent to a scammer because they lost the crypto to that person or the owner of that wallet. And as you trace forward, since it's not that far, it's only a few hops, we're assuming that it stays the scammer, and we see some inputs going in. So there's some assumptions here, but at the end of the day, when we get to the Binance wallet, we're saying that our victims' funds are wrapped up in that 2.86 Bitcoin, and we're saying that we have good cause or probable cause to believe that the rest of that money is probably stolen as well. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
Modus operandi of such scammers would somewhat be the same, i.e., breaking down the amounts, transferring to multiple wallets. Is there any way we can train a model to detect such scams while they're happening, stop the transaction there, uh, and then I'm sorry, stop the transaction there and then and release only after proper investigation has been conducted?
Well, that's the intersection of law enforcement and the civilian world, right? So, or the private sector. We law enforcement has a set of rules. Those usually revolve around probable cause that we have to undertake. So we have to have good cause to believe that those funds are actually AR victims, and B, the rest are stolen as well. I think that's done through historical context, in the sense that we also do this in the fiat world, where we say we have funnel account wallets, and wallets that actually combine funds together before they're paid out to an organization. So we have a historical context to do that, and then if we can maintain a custody trace or a visual trace of how the funds flowed, I think we can reach the standard of probable cause to get a seizure wallet. And it's much less for a freeze, right? We can say, hey, we believe this. They might freeze it waiting for a seizure warrant to come. And if it never comes up, or they just can't get that far, they release the funds. The private sector does. There's like a two-step process. Like, so the seizure is like, we believe this to be true, and please issue a warrant for the seizure. Whereas the freeze is just, hey, in cooperation with law enforcement, give us a little extra time to work on this. Please freeze those funds. So, and if I got that wrong, Scott, let me know. But that's how we kind of build that path to get there. All right. So, and we have to operate within the guidelines. We're not doing anything magical here. We're not sending you down the line saying go try to get private sector to do something that they just won't do for you. We're telling you there's rules in place. This is how you meet those standards, and this is how you build that probable cause up.
Oh, that sounds good. Two questions left. One, I'm gonna go to the last one first, just because I think they need to take off. The question is, can they take the assessment later and still get the certification? And just for the person who asked that question, if you go into the chat, there is a link to access those questions. But I guess, Robert, maybe you know the answer. I'm assuming they can take this
Uh,
later, right?
yeah, I'm pretty sure they can. There's because you can watch the whole thing over again and then take the exam. That's from my understanding. So yeah.
Okay, and someone from Merkle Science is answering that right now. So
Okay,
we'll go to the
perfect.
last question here. Is there any way to track USDC that has been rug pulled?
Well, USDC is going to be on the blockchain, so you follow the blockchain, you take it where it takes you. So yes, the answer is yes.
And last question. Someone just asking if Merkle Science folks can resend the link.
Yeah,
That's it.
they will send a link to your email, the one you signed up with for the course. Yeah, you'll get an email.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. One last question. It was up at the top. I must have scrolled past it. How do you tackle your cases when a criminal organization is involved with professional money launderers laundering money for different OCGs, mostly OTC traders?
Well, with their OTC traders, the first thought that comes to my mind, there's probably going to be a lot of decentralized information there. Not decentralized, I mean centralized information in terms of what the exchange has that on them inside their own private books. OTC is, of course, over the counter, right? So there's an exchange in the middle. Um, so there's going to be a lot of information you need to get from the exchange. That's going to take subpoena power to get in and get that information. Everything else is on the blockchain. So if you have those leads to begin with, you should be able to use traditional blockchain tracing methods that we got you a good intro to today to make those cases.
Yeah, definitely get those records from the exchange. And one more question. Any firms that you would recommend for recovery?
No. I'm not going to recommend any firms for recovery because I haven't found any that really meet my standards. And my standards are simple, be honest. So unless someone has one that I haven't seen yet, and I'm just being honest with you guys, I've seen some tracing companies out there. Well, you know what? I take that back. There was one company that I thought did a great job, but I don't know what they charge the client. So I think one, I'd look the name up for you. But other than that, I know that people get charged a lot of money. They get a tracing report, something like I did. It may or may not be correct. Sometimes it's not. And then they have a bounty on what's recovered out there, and they know that they probably are not going to recover anything from them, but they got paid, $5,000 to $10,000 to do an investigative graph like this. Um, unless it's super complicated, that's a lot of money. And they never tell the victim they can't help them. And I'll tell you what, I have victims come to me and they have a case from 2 years ago, and I just tell them, I said, look, I can do the trace for you, but I can't help you. There's nothing to recover. Your money is gone. It's been gone for a long time. And so when Scott said at the beginning of this that time is of the essence, the sooner the better, he was honest and he was accurate. If a victim comes to you 5 years later and says, "Can you trace my money?" Well, of course we can. Can we get it back for you? No, probably not. Because that money's been washed out through a centralized exchange and has probably been laundered through the fiat world how many times spent, bought the BMWs and the yachts and everything else over and over again. So the best time to help a victim is within about 48 hours after they've been scammed, because then there is a chance that the funds are still on the blockchain or still on an address or still in a centralized exchange where you can actually trace it and get some process served and freeze it if it's possible. So
Yeah.
there's my answer.
I have not. I've read quite a few of those reports from third-party recovery, or tracing companies. I have not been overly impressed. And unfortunately, a lot of those reports tell the victims, yep, your funds are here, here, and here. Give it to police and they'll get you your funds. Well,
Hmm.
in my experiences, the level of certainty that we as law enforcement need to be able to put something in front of a judge is a lot higher than what one of these tracers who's just getting paid to do it needs. So I haven't had the best experience with them. I'm kind of reluctant to throw this name out there because it's the name of a company and I am not suggesting them by any means. And I don't even know if they exactly what they do with assets. But Robert, have you heard of Asset Reality? I don't know if they
Yeah.
actually trace though, so that might be a completely different service.
Yeah. Asset Reality, I know they're a very competent company, but I don't think they do any tracing to recovery. I think they're mostly just all custodial stuff
That's what I
after it's
thought.
been recovered. Yeah. After
Oh,
after it's been recovered.
Yep. Okay, we're on the same page with that. Any other questions? Otherwise, that was the last one.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
we should be good.
all right. Well, thank you very much for joining us today. I know Scott and I had a great time. I love talking crypto, so I can do this all day. Yeah, thank you very much for joining.
Have a great day, everyone.
Have
Thank
a great
you.
day, everyone. Bye bye.